Oh, yeah, they're,
Their grilled chicken.
yeah, the Savannah, chicken salad at McAllister's.
Yeah.
For 12 bucks.
Are you coming back?
Oh, I talked to that guy.
Yeah, hold on. Let me mute. Okay, welcome to Ignite, Section 13, Qualify Potential Buyers and Sellers. There is a ton of really cool information in your packets today, seller sheets, buyer sheets, all kinds of stuff. This is my buddy, Drew. Drew, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and how you're here today with us.
Yeah, so I am currently with Cronkite Homes. I am the Director of Sales and Marketing. We were just recently acquired by Schuber Mitchell Homes, sales manager for them now, but lead listing agent and managing through an entire sales team directly for production builds. So we do a handful of homes a year.
A handful, there's more than that.
But keeps us very busy. And one of the biggest things for us is maintaining our lead volume and conversations. So
Big deal, big deal. And Drew is 2 years into ALC or 1?
2.
This is his second year in ALC, which is our Agent Leadership Council Committee,
Yeah.
something.
Which is really weird for
I'm not
production
sure.
builders. They don't understand why I would want to actually even be in the conversation. So I'm definitely changing the mindset, not just of what Cronkite had, but now of Schuber Mitchell as well. So
Absolutely.
rewriting that expectation and rebuilding some relationships that probably weren't there before.
I think so.
So
And we're lucky to have you. So
happy to be here.
he's gonna share so much great information with you. Make sure that we're interactive and we're online. Make sure you're utilizing the chat or popping through the speaker system. I'm going to leave you guys in capable hands here and very excited to hear about it. What do you need?
I was just looking to see who we had online.
Tammy
We
and
got
Megan.
Tammy and Megan online.
Yep.
Fantastic.
And then the chat will pop up right behind you.
So if you guys see anything in the chat, just like,
We'll let you.
just try not to be like, you know, like mean about it, but just like, dude, like, there's something there. Fantastic. Thank you, Shanna.
Thank you.
I don't know if you guys know it or not, but having Shanna in this building is a fantastic resource and amazing. Not just for anyone getting started or anyone trying to kind of re-up stuff, but just life in general. We have a lot of conversations. Just because things happen, right? So don't ever take that for granted, because I promise you, I've walked into other KW buildings. There's no Shannon walking around. They don't have that, right? So I think she is amazing. She's a rock star. And it's not knocking anybody else, but it's just saying she's definitely one to continue to work with. So, all right. So I have clickers, I have screens, and the reality is I really love having conversations. So for Megan and Tammy online, please put chats in there if you want to hop in and talk. I think everything works as far as talking. And I really just want to go through and we'll just get started. Qualifying potential buyers and sellers. Yes, that's what we're doing today, but we got to go through the usual jargon. We have to say these things. I'm not going to actually say them all out loud, but I do hope that you guys can read and or speed read. But please comply with the TCPA.
I think you have to read it all.
Right, it's there. It's for your awareness and your knowledge. And these are for informational purpose only. By no means are these bylaws or rules that you have to follow, although they're highly recommended if you want to be successful and or, you know, do a decent job. Some people want that, some don't. And then fair housing, obviously, there's a lot of things for us to go through. If you didn't do a fair housing for your most recent CP courses, you're gonna have to eventually. It's just good to know, great information that I hope you all live by, regardless of having to be told to, so. And then copyright, everything here this is all Keller Williams and materials pulled from all sorts of awesome sources that I do hope every one of you is going through. I'll be the first to admit it, when I first started, I got the MREA and I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm with the production builder, everything's fine. I'll just keep doing my stuff and everything will be great. And then I really started diving into the meetings here at KW and the opportunities and the why behind a lot of the different actions that were happening. I was like, oh, well, hey, we're kind of missing the boat. And just because we're building houses doesn't mean that we can't create and foster these types of relationships. It doesn't mean that we can't have those same types of relationships with other agents. And so for us, it was like, wow, this is eye-opening. Like there's a million things that we could start tapping into as a builder and really start to move forward with. So I highly recommend, if you haven't already, reread it, read it 5 times, memorize it. I'm not there yet. Colton on gratitude, I think, can basically verbatim tell you every single page. You start rattling off something, he'll just finish the sentence. It's scary. And I had to go up against him at one point in time we had a listing challenge. Obviously, I had a lot of listings. So did he, but then we had to go up there and like the tiebreaker was who knew the most out of the MREA, and he literally just like smashed me. I was like, that's not even fair. Like you know way too much. So I'm assuming this is everything that you guys have gone through up to this point. So 1 through 12. So it means you guys have had 12 separate meetings, 12 separate speakers-ish.
I did 2 in one day.
2 in one day, yeah. Some of them do merge really well. If you don't, sometimes they get a little bit tough. Is there one so far that has been your guys' favorite?
I think yesterday was super huge. Being able to energize those relationships and just thinking at who we're prospecting to and making sure that we got the people that are around us and are one even closer than we think, and then just bringing people closer into our circle. Yeah, that was huge. I mean, I wouldn't say scared of my sphere of influence, but I'm very well connected here, and everybody's got 5 to 7 different realtors that they use and trust. And so after talking about the triangle of trust and things, I started thinking about, wow, all the Sertomans know that I have all three of these characteristics. I don't have to redevelop my trust with 110 people. This is great.
Exactly.
And so I'm not there to market to them. Obviously, I'm there to help the kids, you know, and do my stuff. But just like I think of J-Dub, you know, I need any type of plumbing things, I can contact J-Dub directly, you know, and or you know, I like to use services because we both share the same mindset of what our goals are. It's not for our outcome, but for helping the kids' outcome. And so going in and dialing and finding out exactly all my people on Facebook. I mean, there's been so many great little caveats. Capturing lead with open houses with Angela or Paulina was absolutely amazing.
She's a rock star at that. Say if you're talking to somebody about an open house, she's done a handful. So
Amy Hunsaker did a really good job talking about her events and how she works specifically with the sphere of influence and how you have to get close to know her before she's even going to help you specifically.
Yep.
I think Venice Williams did a great job. I mean, everybody's kind of knocked it out of the park, and this has been.
I don't feel you.
Well, if these guys aren't here that are just getting started, like this is the orientation training getting started with Keller Williams. You need to be at this thing. And so I think it's super impactful despite graduating bold and doing all these things. Like I'm still fairly new and I want to know everything.
Well, I can tell you this, even when you're not new, this stuff is a great reminder.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the other things is, you know, really talking to other agents within KW. There's so many that are like, oh yeah, what was that again? Or, oh, I should probably get to that. I can't tell you how many times we've gone into trainings that are like, oh, this is something I've been to it 5 times. I'm like, why on earth have you been here 5 times?
Right.
The reality is you find a new nugget every time. And so that's one of the big things I would say is like, while these are fantastic, I would not say like, oh, I've been through Ignite, I'm great. Everything's golden and I'll figure it out as I go. Because I can promise you figuring out as you go hurts a whole lot more than following some tried and true methods and tweaking them as you go, right?
So for me, I haven't been to every meeting.
Mhm.
Some of them I couldn't go to, but more or less I've been picking and choosing the ones I go to, not so much because of the class, but because of who's teaching it through Shannon's
Well, I'm
direction.
Yeah.
So the class I've gotten the most from so far, the first one is Trey's. He helped with some lead generation. I actually I couldn't even make the first half, but I think we all can agree that the stuff that's on the slides isn't necessarily what we're here for.
Right.
It's how your experience with that topic and what you actually do. And Trey really helped me to give me like a specific direction to go that I did not have before I came into the class. Yesterday with Blake was another deal. You know, Blake was talking about relationships, you know, and for me, being 3 weeks in, I was really thinking about this wide net that I was trying to cast.
Mhm.
And what I got from Blake was, no. I need to pick my people and I need to go deep.
Mhm.
And he gave very clear instructions and expectations that I literally went and did it that night and it worked.
Yep.
And it worked. And so that's what I'm here looking for. I saw you at the big event, you know, a couple of weeks ago. I loved everything that you had to say. And this part, it seems like a big expectation conversation. And having I've only done a couple buyers consultations so far. I did not set good expectations. And I didn't realize that until afterward. Because I was like, wait, how do they know what I'm gonna follow up? How do they know what this next step is gonna be? And I was like, am I giving a good client experience?
Right.
No, I'm not. And I honestly, it's because I don't know what it should look like. So I'm hoping I can get that today.
Yeah, well, I definitely think there's a portion of that today that we're gonna cover over. I will always say, Blake and I spend a lot of time chatting back and forth. I love him to death. And I'm pretty sure at one point in time, he said, the wider the net you cast, the bigger the holes in the net. And so that means there's a lot more people that are gonna get through. And so that's the whole purpose of he may or may not have said that, but I'm gonna give him credit for it. And, that's one of the things I'll definitely try to do is anytime I've got somebody, because I have leaned on just about everybody from the leadership council that I have the joy of getting to partner with on. And then also trainings like this where those aha moments happen, right? Some of it's gonna be like, oh yeah, I kind of knew that. Some of it's gonna be like, oh, okay. And then, yeah, I've got a whole notebook of stuff that I do a little bit different than what we have on here. Not gonna say that anything that I'm gonna show you on these slides isn't perfect, and if you follow it, at least gives you a starting point. But what we found are certain things that really help us ignite that conversation, not for lack of better use of words there, right? So briefly going over the agenda, I literally have looked at this timeline so many different ways. I'm like, wait, is it classified? No, it's find motivated. Very unique, but yeah, so the goal for today is to walk through finding the motivated, but really not just finding the motivated. Finding the motivated comes from everything you've done up to this point, right? You've created your sphere of influence. You've created your activities and events in ways that you're going to create that contact and or gain a referral. And at that point, you have potentially motivated people in front of you. But the real question is, what's driving their motivation? How are they wanting to go forward? What are their expectations from you? So classifying able, ready, and willing, being able to go into that, but then also qualifying those buyers and sellers into like, okay, what are my next steps? How do I need to take on this? Okay, great. I know where you're at and this is what we need to do next. And then we'll obviously, as we go through, there's gonna be some recaps. I'd love to get your thoughts on it, or if I didn't go deep enough on something, I want you guys to know that it does not matter where we're at in the conversation. If you're like, I wanna know more, like, hey, but what do you do? Don't ever be afraid to ask those questions. And I will share as much as I can within our time. We've got a decent amount of time to chat through things, so I don't feel like we can't go on a couple tangents and, be able to make it through these slides. They're not the most complicated slides out there. Love these quotes. Gary Keller's been a pretty stinking smart guy for a very long time. So your number one job as a real estate agent is to find ways to get in the path of motivated buyers and sellers. That's literally all you're trying to do, is get those people who are motivated to make a decision to move, and you want to help them with that. You want to hold that motivation. You want to keep them at an emotional high of like, I'm ready to sell or I'm ready to buy. So your job is to maintain, right? So literally getting to this point means that you have created your sphere of influence. You have communicated the fact that you are ready, willing, and able to help them. And they have come to you and said, hey, we're interested. Tell us why we should go with you, right? So finding the motivated. What are some of the myths that you guys have learned along the way about where to find motivated buyers?
Well, for me, it's been that people are just going to come to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's kind of like the first big myth about finding them, is that you don't have to. They're just gonna come out of the woodwork when you say I'm a real estate agent, and that does not happen.
No.
It does not happen. And then going out and finding them, it's difficult. It's difficult to do in just a short amount of time between, phone calls and trying to go to events, things like that. It's a lot of time to maybe talk to one person. And it's a lot of legwork.
Yep. There's a lot of legwork.
But it seems easy to do. It's just a phone call. No, it's 4 or 5 phone calls over the course of a month.
And I'll tell you that this rings true for new production as well. I mean, yeah, we're building homes and we do get people who call in and say, hey, we're looking for a new build. But do you know how many people we get who never once contact us, never even consider, oh, I can afford new? I mean, there's just many myths about being able to afford a new build as there are people who are, on the fence of like, should I even be buying a house? There's a lot of different things that can happen that we can tell ourselves, oh, there's just not that many buyers. Biggest one right now, you guys think which one it is that everybody's saying like, oh, this is why we don't have anybody buying or selling.
Election.
It's election.
I literally had that conversation yesterday.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, and I look back to that and I spent 10 years working at Lowe's. And I was assistant store manager for a while, and then I spent a handful of years as a territory manager for Lowe's vendor supply system. And I think that one of the funniest things is store managers literally would say, oh, it's a rainy day, sales are gonna be down. It's like, the same people need to get the same projects done, the same people need to do the same things. Your builders are still building, you don't have people stop. In fact, those actually turned out to be the busier days because that's when people were preparing for what was coming. Like, oh, tomorrow I've got a big job. I'm gonna go ahead and go buy all the lumber now. Might as well, because it's raining as opposed to trying to play in the mud, right? But knowing when and where to look becomes the more critical part. And I think that's where taking the time, having those events that you're doing intentionally, or you're at intentionally because you know you're consistently meeting with and creating your sphere, is what puts you in that situation. Yes, buyers can be hard to find. And yes, they can be quiet and unassuming at times. But that doesn't mean they don't exist. I will tell you that they are literally everywhere. And they're probably more ready to buy a home. They're just waiting for somebody to ask them the right questions. But this one, I love this. All right, so this is from 2021, which I would love to get a little bit more updated information, but I promise you that it probably still rings true. So where you're going to be finding most of your potential buyers and sellers is going to be coming from referrals. Your sphere of influence is going to drive so much of your business. It's absolutely crazy. When you think about it, like I said, I'm production. We build homes consistently. We have about 150 homes in production at any given time. That's an awful lot. You got to find a lot of people that want to buy that, right? It does not just come from, hey mom, hey dad, you want to buy a house? But it does come from all of the relationships that we create along the way. I can't tell you how many times our trade partners, families have bought homes, how many times there's investors who come back to us and say, hey, we want to get more, we want to do this differently. And we have the families that we've taken care of exceptionally well that come into your sphere of influence. So every time you do a deal, you've added to your sphere. You've added the opportunity to grow and build. Which that's the craziest thing is used agent previously for a transaction is number 2, but that's a stark difference, right? Repeat buyers only go back to their agent 19% of the time. And why do we think that is? Communication, follow-up. It's not having those activities to remind them, hey, I exist, and hey, I'm very present in this market. I know exactly, everything about your home. If you're interested in selling, I can make you the top dollar off of that home, right? I want to help you get into your next, dream home. Because I don't think anybody ever moves into their home, whether they call it their dream home in the first day, it's not their dream home after the first week. And so they're always looking for that next dream home, right? But that all to say, open houses, signs, website, all those things, while they look small, 7%, 9%, 5%, right? When you're looking at those, it's like, oh, well, that's such a small percentage. There are people who literally make their livelihood off of those 4 and 5%, right? I'm sure Blake's probably talked about it previously. There's folks who they have like walking groups that meet up once a week and they go for a walk and they just chat about real estate, and all of their business basically gets drummed up through those quick little conversations with people that they meet with on a regular basis, people with their running groups. All those things, they don't necessarily bring forth a ton, but if you work it and you make that your angle, it's going to work for you. They don't exist because they don't work. Now, sometimes I'd say like a billboard, probably a little bit too much of a spend for a low turn, but for sale signs, open house signs, there's no better way to get your name in front of somebody and get somebody like a bug in someone's ear. Now, the exact same information is out there for sellers, not too far off. However, sellers tend to go back to the people that they've either bought the house from or sold a house with before. Because there's a certain confidence level there, right? It's like, wait, you took care of me. I know you're gonna take care of me again. And that goes also back to communication. And so it's fun to look at these. It's also sometimes defeating to look at this and say like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get everything from referral. And it can be like, wait a second, am I doing enough? Do I have enough people? Have I communicated with them enough? And the answer is probably gonna always be no. You haven't communicated enough. You haven't done enough. But don't ever let that defeat you from actually doing. I don't think that there is anything more powerful than just taking that first step and doing one thing and then being consistent enough to say, I'm gonna do this one thing over and over again. I do the same thing with my sales team. We have a weekly 25 call sheet, which they're gonna make a whole lot more than 25 calls in a week. But I give them a sheet of 5 people that they've worked with previously to just touch base with and say like, one, how's your house? How's everything going? Are you guys great? Are you awesome? Do you have a family member that wants to buy a house? Yeah, do you have somebody that you want to have as a neighbor? Because we're building some more homes down the street. And I'd love for you to have someone that you know just down the street from you. But then we also have on that list agents that we've worked with previously or haven't worked with. So we can instigate that conversation of like, hey, I know we haven't worked together before, but I'd love to show you what I have available. I'd love to talk to you about this and be able to tell you exactly what's coming. Or if you have clients who you're stuck with, I'd love to help you potentially find them a brand new build. So those things all are out there and available, and we'll dive into that a little bit more as we go in. And also opportunities in Command. Is everybody using Command? Yes, no, I don't. I do because for compliance, but we actually have a separate CRM. The biggest key I can say is one, Command is free. It's very small fee, being a part of KW. Use Command, it has a plethora of awesome things. For us personally, on the builder side, we have separate systems and everything we have to operate all of our builds out of. Therefore, we have one that ties into that, so I can take a sold person and want to drop them right in and have it tied to all of their purchases.
What do you guys use?
Lasso, it's part of the ECI platform. So we will be moving to HB1. Don't know exactly all of the ins and outs of that, but that's what our transition is coming.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, I know, that's,
Always learning.
yeah, always learning, but we're also moving out of Lasso for our CRM into HubSpot.
Oh, yeah, I like HubSpot.
HubSpot's
Yeah,
fantastic,
I like
it's
HubSpot.
also very expensive. So typically, it works out really well for a large organization. But I will tell you that when KW has been putting together everything within Command, there's so much to this. But nothing is cooler in Command than when you're able to put in your active potential opportunities. So you can, every time you log in, see like, hey, I have 3 folks who potentially want to sell, and this is what we could potentially sell their homes for. If I could make that happen, you see that potential sale in front of you, you're like, okay, what's my GCI on this? This is gonna be fantastic. Like this is the motivating factor. And that's one of the things I do love about it. I still hop in there every once in a while because we run all of our transactions through there. I use Onward for all of our transactions currently. And so me and Haley will run through and make sure everything's up to date, but it's kind of nice to run through and be like, oh yeah, it's kind of cool. Like see all the numbers. I've got my own spreadsheets with them, but the way they keep it in here is really awesome. Let's see. Oh, true. There it is. It's coming over. All right. So, but the best practices are in this too. Every time you do have someone who is showing interest, every time you have someone who's finally in one of those meetings, say, hey, I've got something, I'd really like to talk to you about this, immediately put them in there. You may not have the potential sale price of their home, but put them in there. Remind yourself that you have a potential cultivating opportunity. Because nothing's worse than be like, all right, yeah, I'll totally get back to you. And then like, wait, who was that? I have to literally get on to my sales team weekly because they're like, oh yeah, I had a great walkthrough and they were super excited. They're definitely going to be, ready to write an offer with us here shortly. Okay, did you put them into the CRM? Oh, no, I didn't. I was like, okay, do you have their contact information? No, I don't. I'm like, oh, so it wasn't a great walkthrough. It almost didn't even happen. It didn't exist. you know?
Spend your time.
Yeah. I was like, so you just spent the last hour and a half, 2 hours having a great conversation with somebody that literally you can't even follow up on. That's the worst. And I know this is nothing new for you guys. You've gone through all these things, but this is the buildup and the conversation. So as far as this is the weird spot for ahas, but I'll jump into it. Major takeaways for you guys when it comes to that buildup. I know you were saying you really appreciated Blake's input on being purposeful, maybe not trying to cast a wide net. But when you have those, have you guys had any moments yet where you're like, oh, like this is like because of this connection, this opportunity, I had someone who popped up that was motivated. We had any of that recently? And ladies online, you can hop on there too, if you're listening to me. But
Evan, so what was the question? Have we had?
So just ahas on your own personal, like taking someone from just creating your sphere of influence to a potential buyer or seller. Have you guys had that chance yet? And if yes, did it feel smooth?
It was smoother than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.
Through some direction from people here, but yeah, I was just reaching out to the people in there. I don't have a big database.
Right.
But I was just sending out a text and I said, hey, do you mind if I ask you, for a favor? And then I just went into it and seeing if they knew anybody that was wanting to buy and sell. That's where the conversation went.
Yep.
And they're like, hold on, I think my sister might be looking. I'll get back to you. And then that was my first buyer's consultation, was setting it up with her sister.
That's awesome.
So yeah, connecting with them definitely kicked out something that was at least a step in the right direction.
Yep. Yep, and that gets the ball started, right? And that's the biggest thing, is I think everybody wants the magic ticket. Everybody wants that, like, do this and you'll get that. The reality is just doing, right? You sent that text.
Yeah, cause she
And-
knew I was doing this.
Yeah.
But it hadn't come to her mind yet. I basically had to call to remind her almost. Then she's like, oh yeah. There's this thing. So I thought
And
that was
so-
kind of funny.
And that right there is exactly why you put folks into your database. That's why you have touch points coming up, and we'll go over the amount of touch points and things like that. There's recommendations. There's people who go over those recommendations. There's people who minimize it down to, simplify life for them as well as, everybody they talk to. But it's the doing, right? I think that's one of my biggest ahas that I had whenever I was building out a team. I was like, oh, I can have a ton of people that can just open doors. But what are they doing when they open the door? What are we doing after we've opened that door? How are we impacting somebody beyond just giving them a home, right? And it's very different than just saying, hey, I just sold you a house. Hey, we just gave you a home, and we want to follow up and make sure that it still feels like home. And we want to help you through that journey, because a lot of our stuff is lower price point, first time home buyers. And it's an exciting opportunity to be a part of that with them. I don't want to lose them after that. And be like, oh yeah, you're good. You're okay for this home, but we're moving on. I want to be like, where are you building another community? You have some, upgraded finishes. And so that's the kind of stuff where just doing it creates that opportunity. And that's where you're going to have those pop up. So identifying a potential buyer or seller is, I hate to say this, as simple as that. It's in the doing. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, totally, like this person totally just raised their hand and said, hey, I want to buy a house. That's going to happen. You're going to have those where you're like, hey, I'm messaging everybody I can, say, just hear me out. If you know anybody, and you're going to get 1 out of 75 text messages that you send, where they're going to be like, oh yeah, I've got somebody. Yeah, let me get back. Yeah, here's their contact info. The key is not to get discouraged by it. And the key is also not to think that because you didn't hear back from them that one time, you'll never hear back from them again, right? People are always moving through the different stages of needing and or wanting, right? And so finding them is always going to be that difficult part. It's like, how do you make that next step? Just continuously do. It's the folks who usually sit back and wait for it to come to them that they'll tell you that real estate is terribly hard It's so difficult to find buyers, they just don't exist. And unless you have like years of experience, you're never gonna be able to do consistent business. Those are the people who are sitting there waiting for somebody to come to them, rather than consistently making those small touch points that create an opportunity that becomes consistent business. So I'll get off my soapbox on that one. So classifying by ready, willing, and able. So this means a lot of different things to different people. Let's just start with able. What does it mean for a buyer to be able?
Financially able, Eric.
Financially able? What?
Pre-approved. Pre-approved.
Pre-approved, mentally able, right? Like sometimes, hey, I can do this. I'm financially capable of doing this. I don't know. I don't think you're really able to make that next step because something could be tying them still to that house, or the idea of it could be so daunting that it keeps them held in spot. Able is, it's a tricky word for me, because a lot of people are able of doing a lot of things. I'm able to get in shape. Obviously, I have not spent that much time in the gym here recently, so I'm able. There's nothing telling me I can't do it, but I haven't. I'm not putting myself forward in that sense. So even, I love this little statement in here, is like, even though all leads and contacts have a potential, so like everybody you have in your database could potentially buy or sell a home within the next year to 10 years, right? It doesn't mean that you're gonna close a home with them next month. So yes, they're critical, they're important, they're people you wanna talk to, but it doesn't mean that they're able to be that next opportunity for you. So jump through that. And then, yeah. So one of the other things to this, just to keep it within the KW realm, the Y4C2Ts, right? 2Ts, sorry, ES, is customers always come first, right? And so when you have somebody who comes to you and says, hey, I want to buy a house, do we immediately just say, awesome, great, I'm just gonna go ahead and find you a bunch of houses and we're just gonna go ahead and put it all out there? Right? So great. I'd love to know more about that. Do you have time for us to sit down and really understand exactly what you're looking for? If you're prepared to start diving into the numbers of what you're looking for, and have you really talked it through with, are there other family members that are, you know, interested in this as well with you? Are you guys excited about it? Is this a personal choice? Is this you making your own? There's a lot of things to know before you really dive in, right? But that initial, like when somebody says, hey, I want to buy a house, typically they've said they're ready. There's a lot more to figure out. That willing and able part really comes in. And it's usually not just them, although sometimes it is. All of us are in different places. Focus becomes increasingly possible in direct proportion to how clear you are about what you want, when you want it, and what you must do to get it. This is very true, not just for our buyers and sellers, but for ourselves. I think this is a double entendre in the sense that this is, yes, we're talking about buyers understanding exactly what they want, what they're willing to do to get what they want, but then also us of what we want and what we are willing to do that as well, right? So it's also another thing out of the MREA. So this is the perfect storm, if you will. I always love these, what do they call those, Venn diagrams? Is that what it is? Where you've got like, everything can happen. Now, that's not to say that somebody can't come and be ready and willing, but not able, figure something out, right? Not able to buy their dream home, right? But they're able to buy a home. That could be a thing. So they're able to adjust. I think these all happen and move and shift. And to assume that everybody, when they're ready to buy or sell, is going to sit perfectly here in the middle is a pipe dream. I don't think that you're ever going to have somebody who is 100% ready and 100% willing and 100% able. I think everybody is in some degree or shape. So you're going to have people closer to this little dot, closer to that dot. And the most important thing to remember is that's okay. It's going to happen. And you're going to have buyers that when you do close on the house, you've done literally everything you possibly can, and their emotional high is probably not where you expected it to be. That's the most frustrating part on mine is like
Yes.
really selling, we move through a lot of houses and we see a lot of life change. And for every time I see life change, I have that one that sticks in my head of where they just weren't excited. They weren't thrilled. It's almost like they were forced into it, even though you're like, if you don't want to buy this house, don't buy this house. Even though you like literally did everything you could to make it the most amazing experience and you went above and beyond with them in every situation, you still get to the closing table and it's like, I feel like I let you down somehow, but it's because one of those three was off for them. They may have had to, maybe they weren't willing, but they had to, right? And maybe they weren't able and they had to have a co-signer step in and help them. We've had a few of those pop up where it's like, we have to buy a house when we can't, but hey, our family's helping us and there's a little rub there sometimes, but it's being open to that and knowing like, hey, even when this one isn't perfect, I'm still gonna be here for you. I'm gonna help you through this process and acknowledging like, I know that this isn't exactly how you wanted it, but I wanna be there with you. And down the road, when you have the opportunity to do it how you want, I want you to know I'm here for that as well. That's a huge part, right? So one of the big things is getting people down to their motivation and ability. And one of the ways that we get around it within our business is we really try to take the transaction out of the conversation right off the bat. So if somebody walks into our offices and they're like, all right, well, we're ready to buy a home, or we're just looking, we immediately walk away from well, how many bedrooms, how much square footage, how many car garage, like what, because those are transactional information items that they're probably already prepped to tell you. Because they've looked online, they've seen 17,000 different home plans. They've looked at everything on Realtor.com, Zillow, and they've decided on this is what it will take for us to be happy. Because that's what they think is perfect. And I'm not gonna say they're ever wrong, but at the same time, I also wanna know what it is that drives that. So bear with me. I don't know which one of these markers is gonna write best. So we have a different way that we go about it. We call it the 4-2 formula. It's actually Jeff Shore, if you guys are ever interested in like learning other sales methods and things out there. In order for us to better understand a ready, willing, able buyer, we want to learn their story. But we want to learn their story in the frame of what they're looking for, why, more about them. So what we do is we have a sheet. Oh, this is not gonna work out well at all. Oh, no.
That one needs to be thrown away.
I don't know if you guys can even see that one.
I can't see it.
Ah,
Now we're good.
Here we go. I'm just gonna do this really big because I feel like the bigger I write, the better. All right, so we rank it into 4 quadrants on a sheet of paper. And we say, hey, I'm super excited that you're here today. And I would love to get to know a little bit more about you and also understand exactly how I can help you in this journey, whether it's just looking or you're saying you're ready to buy. So you really want to tee that up with, do you have a few minutes for me to ask a couple questions to really understand you and your situation a little bit more? And so you're stepping into this like, okay, hey, yeah, I got a bunch of houses. Yeah, I can talk all day long on how we've got a special promotion going on, but none of that matters. It doesn't matter if the interest rates are 8% or if they're 2%. It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, they have a writing motivation as to why they want to buy. They have a motivation as to what they want to see. And if you can find all of that for them or find a way to answer a lot of those things for them, then you have an active, capable seller or buyer. So you start off just asking a couple of relationship questions like, hey, so has something recently happened that has propelled you into the home search? Obviously something cause you to say like, I'm gonna go look at a house. Or, hey, I wanna go into this open house, right? It may just be simple, I live down the street and I wanted to see, fine. But usually there's a story of like, I'm looking for this or that. And that's the moment that you say, okay, tell me more about that. So you've got your motivation. Which your motivation is not, I need 2,100 square feet. That's not a motivation. That's an end goal statement that doesn't mean anything because 2,100 square feet can mean a million different things in a million different houses. The motivation question that you're asking is, okay, well, what is it that makes you want, like if they come in and say, oh, I need 4 bedrooms. Okay, well, tell me more about that. Why do you need 4 bedrooms? And they're gonna say, oh, well, I work from home. I need an office for myself. My wife also needs an office. But we have a kid and we have family members come over from time to time. So, okay, great. So you're telling me that you need to have the space set up for each one of those. And that can look a lot of different ways, right? So tell me more about the kids. What are their age? What's their names, right? Like, what's their age? So you can understand, well, okay, great. What do they do in the house? Do they play video games? You guys outdoors family? Like, what is that? So you're asking questions to get to know them. You're not asking questions to just figure out exactly which house. Now, hopefully you have a Rolodex of like, okay, I know how I'm gonna be able to meet their needs, or, ooh, okay, great. Well, that's 2 home offices. Oh, man, great. Well, tell me more about those home offices. Do you work late at night? You work during the day while the kids are at school? Are you a day trader and you do, like 2 a.m. trades? Like what is that? Do you need to have separation and space? You're asking those questions, not because you're trying to get a glimpse of their interior life, but to get a glimpse of exactly how that space is going to be utilized. Like, hey, do you have a command central with like big giant screens? Or are you much more like, hey, I just need one computer and like a desk is all I really need? Because that just changed it from potentially a full bedroom to a like little nook in the corner of a room, right? Like, hey, I just need an office so I can do the family, crunching of the numbers on a regular basis. I don't really need a dedicated space. Then you're also going to want to ask a dissatisfaction. So what about your current situation is motivating you to look for something new? You can get stuff from the kitchen to the living room to like, this is where they're gonna literally say like, hey, what do you literally hate about your current living situation? It could be where they're renting and they hate having people all around them. It could be their current house is just not big enough because the family's grown. Every single one of these questions, every time you're trying to glean more into their life, you're getting information from them that's going to help you answer what? How many bedrooms? What size of home might be best? How many car garage? Like you're gleaning all of that information without asking for that transactional data that's not going to give you insight into what they actually need. And then we also have usual dissatisfaction. I drop right here to what's called future promise. Future promise can get a little bit hairy because everybody watches HGTV or has watched HGTV, and they all have, Joanna Gaines vibes of like, oh, I can make everything fantastic, to like, oh, we can do whatever we want. It's not going to cost a dime. So I would temper the future promise conversation to, okay, great. So they tell you, we hate our kitchen. All right, well, tell me, what would a perfect kitchen look like? Or what would you want to see in your next kitchen? And that future promise is like, I need a space where my family can come for Thanksgiving. I want my kids to have a room that they can do their homework in and play video games whenever they're done with their homework. Like you're getting to understand how they want to use the space that you're trying to help them find. So, the biggest thing for us and our team is like, we've got 35 different home plans that we can build. That doesn't mean every community is gonna have them, but then that also gives us a Rolodex that as we're having that conversation with them, automatically, I'm like literally flipping through like, oh, okay, none of the 3-bedroom homes, let's forget those, because they got too many family members, they've got family that visit, they need offices, okay. Boom, okay, I'll go to these 5-bedroom plans, great, cool. Which communities are those in? Perfect, I've got that all squared away, great. And so as you're going through all that, say, cool, so you live currently you're renting and you're in which city? Okay, great, you're in Nixa. Do you want to stay in Nixa? Is that a big thing? The kids are going to school there too? I probably don't want to move them. Okay, cool. Like, you're okay to move. Do you have anywhere in mind that you want to be? I know we're sitting here in Republic. Is this an opportunity or are you just looking to see the different floor plans, right? Getting those key points from them without it being like, okay, great. Where do you want it to be? Now, that's not to knock what's coming up when we start talking about an actual like form to fill out in a sheet. But this is how you do that conversation and make it feel less transactional and more personal, more relational, and to the point where they're like, okay, I'm dishing all this information. So we've got future promise, dissatisfaction, motivation, and then as you're going through it, relational. Relational is where you put in the family stats, the dogs, the cats, the family members who visit frequently, right? Like, oh, my mother-in-law likely will be moving in with us, or oh man, we do family Thanksgiving all the time. And so what you've got is you've got what's causing them to look for a home, the things that they're like, okay, well, this is why we're looking for a home. This is everything we don't like about where we're currently at that we would love to solve. Here's everything that we would potentially solve this, but then those little extra items along the way, like, ooh, you know what, we don't have one now, but if I could have a mudroom. Ooh. It's not that I'm dissatisfied that I don't have one, but man, if I could have one, right? How cool would that be? And then relational is just helping you kind of round that out to say, okay, great, exactly why and who. And those are critical things, because when you do this next part, so you've got this is what we call the 4 2. So these are the 4 major items that you need to have. And what it really is these 4 combined need to be greater than their fear of moving forward. So it needs to be that whole thing has to be greater than the potential of the painful increase in, monthly budget for covering that home cost. The potential of moving, all those different things. There's a lot of stuff that comes with buying a new home that incites fear and or, heavy feelings, right? So there's a lot of reasons why people walk away from buying a house. We've probably all seen or heard stories, probably just from going through this training, you've probably heard stories of things happen. Or things can happen outside of the home buying thing that we don't have control over. But understanding those things tend to happen less, because usually if there is a relational situation, that's gonna come out like, oh yeah, the mother-in-law, your father-in-law's health is not so great, your mother-in-law may end up moving in. If something happens while you're looking for a house for him to the father-in-law, it's not a shocker, but you're aware of it and say, oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. How can I help you? And we can take a pause, like whatever we need to do, or does this speed things up? Because I want to make sure that I'm doing the best I can for you, right? So once you've gotten through the 4 discovery categories, the next big thing is to take and make vision agreements with that. So, okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. If it's okay, I'd like to kind of recap exactly what I heard as to what you're looking for and what the potential solution for that's going to be. And so basically what you're doing is you're saying, okay, so you're wanting to move or you're wanting to sell because of X. You literally want to get out of these things for some odd, not some odd reason, for some very specific reason. And you would love to be able to meet these potential needs for the kids, space for the pets,
Right.
family members, all that.
I like that a lot.
As you're talking about the dissatisfaction, you throw in the family members who don't like it, because they're gonna tell you those things and say, okay, great, tell me about that. Oh, man, like, oh, you have 3 daughters with 1 bathroom? Oh, tell me how mornings look, right? And so like, cause they're gonna dish all that, like, oh, it's terrible, there's yelling, there's screaming, hot water is gone within the first 30 minutes, like, all of that stuff, they're gonna tell you all those things, and say, okay, great, so you, literally, we've gotta get you out of this single bathroom for the 3 girls, we've gotta figure out a solution for that, so your mornings become that much simpler for the girls and for you, right? So you're shaping that conversation as like, okay, I'm getting an understanding of exactly what you're looking for. And you're taking that out of, okay, so you wanna buy a house. Yeah, we wanna help you buy a house, we wanna help you sell your house. Like, hey, I know you wanna sell it, I know this is why you wanna sell it. I'm gonna shape it out to be the most amazing house ever. There's someone who this house meets the needs for. And if you're doing this with everyone that you're helping sell a home, and you're also doing it with everyone you're helping to buy a home, you're gonna have a really good understanding of exactly what you're looking for and then what you're selling. Right? And so it's gonna give you a whole new shape to it. I'm a big fan of it, but that for me is how we define our ready, willing, and able buyers. We don't, you notice one thing I haven't talked about yet on that? Finances.
Yeah.
I did not dive into finances,
Absolutely
right?
Nope.
Because the reality is, most of those folks have already had some kind of conversation, and if they haven't, we step right into that conversation and say, okay, great. So based off of all this, let's start diving into the types of homes. Now, we automatically go into, okay, I've got something. So we go into a mutual agreement statement of like, okay, based off of everything you said, I've got some really awesome stuff. I have the perfect home figured out in my mind. Let me dive into that with you. And so you start to explain back to them. So, okay, based off of your needs for this, this, and this, I've got this community. And we start with the community because I have multiple. And you say, does that sound great? Yes, awesome, okay. And then we go to the floor plan. All right, the floor plan, it's a keystone. It's actually a really fun plan, but it meets every single one of your needs. And it has this room for this, a room for these kids here, your space for their dinner, for Thanksgiving. It's got an awesome setup with the dining table just off the kitchen. You're gonna be able to entertain, it's gonna be perfect. Does that sound really good? Awesome, okay, cool. This specific home that I'm thinking of is on, let's just say for perfect world example, hey, this is on a corner lot, and you told me you got the 2 dogs. This corner lot has a huge backyard. And this huge backyard is gonna be perfect once you put a fence on it after you move in, for you to go ahead and have those dogs running, and they're gonna have the time of their life. So, is there anything about that potentially wouldn't work? Oh, that sounds great. Okay, awesome. So let's go check it out. And then let's start talking about how we can make this a reality. Now, perfect world scenario, everything was wonderful. There's also follow-ups where it's gonna be like, no, I'm not living in Republic. Believe it or not, I've heard that a lot. You build enough homes in Republic, like, we'll never live in Republic. Okay, cool. Like, I want to be in Nixa, but I want it for like 120, but it doesn't happen. But you're going to have a lot of no's. And in a perfect world, yeah, everything like, man, I teed this up so great. But the best thing to say is like, okay, great. So for you guys, you take that and say, okay, great. This is exactly how we're going to solve these problems. So this is what I need to find you. I need to find you a home that's going to help us meet this. And so when you do find those homes, instead of you going to 25 different homes that you're, man, this has been a rough weekend. We walked through 25 homes. Every single one of them was terrible. Well, now you're teeing them up with those homes and saying, hey guys, this home that I'm taking you to, this is how it meets this need, this future promise, this dissatisfaction that you currently are dealing with and how it solves it. You're approaching the home differently with them. So when they walk in, they understand, okay, this space meets this for me. This opportunity is solved here. You're framing it differently. Another trainer I had called it vetoes. And so you set the vision of the home, you give an example of how that home can be utilized for everything that they've told you about. You tell them specific traits of the home that are key for them to see as they walk in. And then you create the opportunity, the O of the veto, I don't know if you're the VETO there. You spell the opportunity out for them and say, wouldn't it be great to have this home which does this, this, and this for you and your family. And then you walk them in the front door. Because you're saying like, hey, I'm here to be your trusted expert, and this is exactly why I found this home to be one that fits as many of your potential needs as possible, right? Dramatically changes things. It's not a, okay, hey, great, this is a 1,700 square foot, 4-bedroom house with 3-car garage. Let's go check it out. Oh, okay, too old, you don't like it? Okay, cool. You can do a lot of those in one day. So I'm a big fan of that, and I'll hop off my soapbox. Hey, there's nothing online, so I'm gonna trust that everything's good, you're copacetic. So classifying your opportunities, and I may be slapping this one, Shannon can look back at this and she can get mad at me. This is a really good way to just kind of say, okay, hey, this person is ready to buy, this person's thinking about buying, or this person is gonna buy eventually sometime, not this quarter. Arguably, a C buyer, they're hard. But the problem is a C buyer, if you find the right house for them, could become an A buyer. One of the biggest things for us as well is like, if you notice when we go through that, when somebody comes in the front door with us and we have that conversation, they give us the grace of that 15 minutes that it takes to really get that information. When we're doing that recap and we're then saying, okay, I have a perfect home in mind for you. That doesn't always mean that I'm going to tell them I have a perfect home that's already built or in process. That perfect home for them may actually be a plan that I haven't put in ground yet, that won't start for another 2 months, and say, hey, it's going to be 8 months before I can get you into that house, but let me show you exactly how it meets all of your needs. And this is why I recommend it, right? And so we're setting them up to say, hey, are you willing to wait 8 months with us? We're also, at times, we have that home and it's move-in ready. Move-in ready, let's temper that, is 30 to 45 days. I'm not gonna make any lender feel like they have to break their backs to try to get in the house in 2 weeks, right? It can be done. I don't recommend it. It's chaos. But we literally set them up and say, hey, great. This home is actually, if you guys are ready and willing, we can get you into this home within the next 30 to 45 days. Does that sound great? And that's allowing them to say, yes, we're ready. Or actually, we're looking more for about 6 months out. 6 to 8 months would really make us happy. Say, great. What did you think of the community I explained to you? Oh, that community sounds perfect. It's exactly where we want to be. You say, cool. Well, I have lots available and we can go ahead and plan that. Are you ready to go ahead and go into contract with that for us today? You're creating the opportunity for them to literally have no reason not to say yes. And in the same sense as that for us, whenever you guys go out and start helping with the buying and the selling process, you're saying, awesome, great. Hey, I found what I think is the perfect home for you. It's ready, it's in the market. Or, hey, you know what? I have an opportunity. Let me follow up. Like if you've got someone who you know is going to be selling their home and everything they're saying they wanted is exactly what your seller is teeing up to get out of and move on from. So you know what? Let me just see what the timeline looks like. Let me get back to you. I'm not gonna say everything has to happen within the 15, 20 minutes that you meet with somebody, but you've got to be willing to run through that in your own mind and say, okay, what do I have? What do I know of? And that's why being aware of the market, being on top of what's out there, helps you be that much more ready and willing to help them in that process. And they literally, they'll knock their socks off with just that little bit of personalization of understanding exactly how they want to use the home. But one of the things to that, when you guys are talking with folks, has anyone here had the opportunity to really understand the timeline from their clients? Has it been just a straight up like, well, when are you looking to move?
So, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, I feel, I'm just having like a feeling of kind of like exposed right now as you're kind of going through that, because this is almost like an aha for me. I hope I'm not derailing what you were just asking.
No,
but
go right ahead.
like in the only 2 conversations that I've had so far, what you just did went so much deeper than what I went. I'm looking back and I'm like, these were really shallow conversations, transactional conversations that I had. And I noticed that you going through those first two boxes is almost just like building this like huge pile, this huge like spike of pain. And then the lower two is like a relief almost of that pain. And I did not do that in either one of mine. I basically just skipped straight to the second and the fourth. And I didn't really dig deep enough to have that conversation.
The important thing to know on that is you're not alone.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that even our team, who's been trained to talk like this on a regular basis, can immediately skip out of it the moment that somebody just walks straight in and starts telling them details. And they're like, we're ready to buy. This is what we're looking for. Like, they turn their brain off, even though I've literally said, it's like, great, they're ready to buy. They're willing to pay up to X. Just because they're willing to pay $750,000 for a house, and you find that house that's perfect at $750,000, doesn't mean that's the house they should be buying. Yeah, and that's a crazy thing for me to say, because we're constantly building, we constantly need to move those homes. So I feel like it's even crazier sometimes when we go to somebody and say, hey, based off of everything you're talking about, you really need a semi-custom to a custom build. And you financially seem to be very well prepared and capable of that. We're not the right builder for you. We've got some great folks we can recommend, but based off of this, this is everything you're looking for and this is everything you need. This is the direction you can go, because I think it's going to be the best move for you. For you guys, that creates that opportunity to say, okay, great. Based off of everything you just said, hey, we could potentially meet the need here, we can meet it there. But I will tell you that 98% of the agents who come to our doors with buyers literally come to us, give us the main details. And when we ask, okay, well, great. Like, do you have a story? What's the backstory? We might get number of kids if they have pets. Now, there are some amazing agents in this market that do exceptionally well. One of the guys that I literally think is just an absolute rock star, Terrence Arrington. He's not even a KW agent. I love that man to death. He is amazing at understanding his clients and what they're looking for, their motivators. Stephen Bunch is another one. Both those guys over at Alpha, they're fantastically amazing. They know some amazing stuff about their clients. They do a really good job. Blake does the same thing with his clients, really understanding what it is. Adam Grady and his entire team, they have a whole team of ISAs and OSAs who are gleaning some of that information just on the phone. But then when they sit down and they have their initial discovery meetings, whether they're looking to buy or sell, they're asking those very questions like, okay, well, what's motivating you? What's driving that? Because they understand it's that relational part. And so that's the super cool part about getting to share that, because that does create an aha. And not every communication point is going to be perfect. You're gonna have people who are gonna literally jump over all of this. The reason why we do a 4-part sheet of paper is because nobody is ever gonna be perfect at telling you exactly everything in order. When they start telling you their dissatisfaction, they're usually gonna couple it with what the future promise is, what they're looking for to get out of it, right? You've just gotta be willing to say, okay, cool, all right, so, but that's, the dissatisfaction was this, and you're wanting this, right? Like, okay, cool, and so you know to drop it down to the future promise. The motivating factors of like, hey, there's a life change, hey, we're getting married, we're getting divorced, we're moving to Antarctica, whatever those things are, those are all in the motivating factors. They're probably gonna bleed into, hey, with families growing, we don't have near enough room. That's a dissatisfaction, right? We really need to have enough space for XYZ, right? So you gotta be willing to like bounce around and jot the notes down. I'm terrible at reading my notes. I don't know if you can tell my handwriting when I get in a hurry gets real choppy.
Great.
Right.
It doesn't look bad.
Yeah, trust me, it can get really, really dicey. But that's the thing is like, as you're going through that, and then as you classify them, what you're doing is you're helping not just them understand, okay, are we ready to do this? Because you're gonna find somebody who says, hey, we're looking maybe 90 days out, max. If you find the right house, they're a 0 to 14 day person. Like, they'll write that day if you find them the right house. Like, you know what? I've actually been looking at the market. What you're talking about sounds very similar to a home I just saw. Let me pull some information together because I think I know exactly how we can meet your needs. And if you put that house in front of them, they're like, oh my gosh, this is Like, it could be a house they've already looked at online, a lot of people do that now, or it'd be like, oh, you know, we didn't even look at that house, we didn't even think about it. Like, that's perfectly in our range, we're ready to go, awesome, great, let's go ahead and get you pre-qualified. Let's get that conversation started with your lender, right? It gives you that strength point of like, okay, now that we know what you're looking for, let's work through the how, right? But that also helps you define like, okay, great, so you're not ready. And so you can classify, okay, great, I got this. I don't need to call them tomorrow. I don't need to call them next week. I probably need to touch base with them here in about a week and a half. To say, hey, guys, I just want to touch base, make sure everything was good. I know you were saying about 90 days. That does mean that we've got some things we probably want to go ahead and get knocked out. And I've got the search set up. I'm personally trying to find the perfect home that's going to meet X, Y, and Z for you. And as I come up with those, I'm going to try to compile them so we're not just running out all over the place. I want to purposely get you into the right home, not drive through 25, right? So nobody wants to go around driving around 25 houses in a weekend. Sure. I know we kind of already hit on one aha from that. Do you guys have anything as far as qualifying and setting that timeline with them?
I had a listing appointment yesterday and I gave her both ends of the spectrum, basically, like I explained days on market now are a lot longer than when you built this house in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So I went over, this may be a minute, so are you okay with not moving for a little bit? But I also said, but it might sell the first day.
Right.
And you haven't found a house yet, and you're not ready, to pack. She's single mom with a daughter.
Mhm.
What do? Are you prepared for that? Because we're gonna have to majorly speed up finding you a house.
Mhm.
Just to
We're
mentally
trying to
prepare for that.
negotiate that out with
Yes.
potential buyers,
Right.
which can get dicey,
Right,
right?
so,
It's not all of them are perfect.
yeah, so because her place is kind of specific, it's out near Buffalo, it's 15 acres, so I mean, it'll probably be a little bit, but just in case, you never know, that might be
It
the
could be
perfect.
the dream home for someone.
Right,
It could
so
literally be that thing.
I just wanted her to know that if you are searching for homes right now, before we even talked, and you really haven't found anything that you like, and I search and I maybe find one or two, you may have to pick one of those two right away
Yeah.
to
Well,
write an offer.
And I
on,
think
so.
to that point, if you've done your due diligence of making sure you fully have like, hey, I know that if I find a home that meets this, and this, if we're missing something, I can explain how this would help that. Like, I always tell folks like, there's no possible way that the 35 plans that we build are perfect homes for everybody. And in fact, I moved into a house I thought was perfect for me. Within the first week, I was like, man, I wish I changed this, wish I hadn't done that, and it's like, oh, why do I have this basement? The kids won't even play in it. Like, those things happen, life's gonna happen, but to that point, it's like, hey, great. I just want you to be aware, there's a chance that this home could sell within the first week, or it could take months.
Right.
Right? You have to find the right buyer, and I will do everything I can to find that buyer for you, but I want to make sure that I'm helping you get the right home teed up, and that we may find it, and just so you know, if we do find it before I sell it, we can put a contingent deal on it.
Mhm.
And so walking through, like, hey, I just want you to understand, like, we can do these things. It's not a total loss. But I need you to be willing to work with me if those things pop up. But when you put it in the scope of like, hey, we've worked through this, we've talked through, I understand what it is, you understand what could be. And I think that's the due diligence of any agent, is being able to kind of have both sides of that spectrum. Because if you only tell her like, hey, I'm gonna sell this house, well, like, is she thinking in a week? Or is she thinking, okay, he's gonna sell his house, but it's gonna take like a month and a half, 2 months. I've got time. That's the scariest thing I think anybody ever says, is like, oh, we're good, we got time. Right? It's a doozy. It makes my anxiety kick in real hard. I have that tightness in the chest. I'm like, okay, sure. Because I say that, like, oh, we just started the house, we've got time. And the next thing I know, we've got all the interior infill done. I'm like, oh, yeah, no, we're pretty fast at this. So, any other ahas, insights?
I think I've been just through about everything in 3 months, like, buyers changing expectations, not ready to purchase anything, having to transition from Texas up here, taking me around to 14 different houses, revisiting one house 3 different times. And they don't even have their house on the market yet. I mean, they're still
Mhm.
working on things and haven't even listed stuff down in Texas. And she's like, hey, send this house. I'm like, hey, by the time you sell your house, this will probably be sold. When we get a little bit closer and actually get your house listed, maybe that's a better time to start looking at that time. Had my listing right now, I thought I did an amazing, warm up, turns out, he's concerned about his autistic daughter. I don't even think she's autistic. Like, she had a full-on conversation with me the other day, which was awesome. And I want to take her out of Ozark schools, but some considering renting an Airbnb in Nixa while they're doing the transition. He has expectations that this whole process is going to take 6 to 8 months, and doesn't want to take her out of Ozark schools. And then he's like, oh, we're just going to wait on listing my house right now until we find a house. I said, well, great. I mean, and so he wants to make lowball offers with contingency. I'm like, it doesn't really work like that, bud. And then he's like, don't worry about the contingency or the reverse contingency and like giving us 25 days to move. Let's just go ahead and sell our house. And then, so we started looking for houses. I probably showed them 12 houses. They loved the houses, and now they're like, you know what? We're gonna sell our house and then we're gonna rent for 6 to 8 months and save $10,000. I'm like, whoa. 6 months, that $300,000 house is gonna be 3% more. You're gonna pay $356,000 for a $347,000 house. And you're going to take $12,000, $2,000 in rents each month for 6 months to save $10,000. I don't see you losing, or saving $10,000. I see you losing $22,000.
Right.
Because that's $10,000 more that he also has to finance, but $12,000 he has to pay in rents. I was like, so he's not willing to have that conversation. He wants to do whatever he wants to do. My first listing appointment was with one of my very good friends. We go out on the boat all the time. She's got a 5-bedroom, 3-bath out in Ozark on Nixa, right by the high school.
Mhm.
And I did all these comps showing, what it looks like when you price your house too high and how these guys sold in 2 or 3 days, and put all the stuff into perspective. But there was no motivation. She didn't know where she wanted to go. She wanted to go to Denver, Florida, run a house, buy a house, what she wants to do next. She has no clue. I started putting together like different checklists to do, so she's not overwhelmed with everything. They decided to paint their cabinets themselves and do all kind of, I'm like, oh God, this thing needs work.
Yeah.
Right. So she gave her neighbor a $12,000 Lowe's credit card to fix up her house. And I'm like, wow, that's very I've known him for 10 years. It's not even activated. I'm like, what are you doing here then? Like, so she has no motivation. I'm trying to continue to have that conversation, not about the real estate, but just keeping in touch with her. Hey, what's up? Did you do anything stupid for Halloween this weekend or whatever it is? I have had another one who has motivation was selling his house to move next to his mom on his property, build something. He's got a house in Marshfield that should sell for about $250,000, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, quarter lot. And everything's been done. I mean, new hot water heater, appliances, new roof, new siding, new flooring, like everything's been done in this place. I said, well, hey, like rates just went back down. If you were to sell your house in 30 to 45 days, would that be good? He's like, well, and we kept having these conversations. It's like, man, I don't even know what's going on yet. If mom's gonna get her property, we're just gonna buy something and find something else. And so having that kind of broken down really does get to the heart or the pressure point of that transaction, really. In boats, we had everything mapped out, and it was kind of just general conversation. Sweet, where are you boat? Cool, what kind of boat you got, bud? How long you had it? Sweet, like, do you trailer your boat or do you have a slip down here? So we're gradually getting into some of these,
We're
harder.
able to build rapport
qualification
off
questions.
of
Right,
the singular item.
right.
Whereas real estate is uniquely diverse. So what I heard in almost all three is you have three transactions where their motivation is waning.
Right.
Right? Whether it's they don't understand their own timeline or they don't understand exactly what their future promise is.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things, I'm not saying any of us are relationship experts, nor are we therapists that can solve all of those problems. But the better we can understand the future promise that they're looking for, like whether it's buying or selling. And sometimes that future promise, you gotta understand what their future promise is to get the motivation for why they're gonna sell what they have today. There's no possible way you're gonna get somebody to walk out of a house and say, yep, I'm gonna sell it, I'm gonna make a bunch of money, and then, oh shoot, well, what do I do next? Right? So it's like, oh, let's talk about your future promise. Let's dive into that. I might be able to find you a referral agent out in Florida or Denver. Let's talk about that. What is like your motivation? What is it you want next? And my biggest thing I can say is don't let it be something that drags on and on and on for you. People do not understand how much time it takes to do what we do. They also don't understand how little you're making off of that conversation. Right? It could be a very lucrative conversation if you can guarantee a sale or a buy of that home. But what can happen in some of those is like, yeah, we're buds, we'll chat about it. I'll ask them his 2 cents, and they don't plan to actually do anything with it. And that puts you in a bind because you've devoted a lot of time and effort and conversation into something that ultimately isn't going to become something for you. And so that's where really diving in, okay, great. Let's dive into this. Let me understand exactly, one, why are you wanting to move? What is the leading cause that's told you, say, hey, it's time for me to sell my house? Or it's time for me to start looking to buy a new one? And what am I trying to solve with that? What current dissatisfaction do I have in that? And what future promise am I trying to gain? Because some of them, like, I would argue there's a lot of people who just say, I'm ready to sell my house. I don't know anybody who's looking to sell that doesn't have a very specific reason as to why they want to sell it and what they think they're going to find in relation. But it's a tough game to play. And I'm not going to say that I'm ever perfect at it. I have an advantage on my side. I'm building homes in front of myself. So I have a very unique situation, which I'm like, all right, cool. It's not one of these homes. I can hand it off. And I have the luxury of being able to do that. And so it's not deaf on me that I get to do stuff like that. So please know that when I'm like, hey, this is perfect, this is amazing, it's not going to be perfect and amazing in every situation, but it is going to help you gain clarity.
Yes.
And it's going to give you that ability to say, hey, you know what? Like, this sounds like this is about a 90-day out thing. I'll touch base with you regularly, or if I get your bud that you go to the lake with a lot, like, hey, we can chat about this, but like, let me know when it's serious, right? Because you don't want to devote too much of your time and effort into things that aren't going to
Come to fruition.
Right. You need to take care of yourself in those and protect yourself because your time is valuable. And your processes deserve just as much time and space as they need in order for you to be successful, right? You can't lead gen, you can't reach out to a bunch of people if you're constantly trying to cater to someone who's never actually going to like be there in that transaction with you. And that's where getting that motivation, getting the understanding of exactly what it is and leveling with them, say, great. Like when you circle back and you do the what we call our vision agreements of like, okay, so based off of everything we've talked about, you want this to solve this. You're excited for the opportunity of this. And this is exactly what brought you in today. And is everything right there? Great, right? You're getting a small buy-in. It's a soft close is what it's called in that conversation is you're getting that statement of like, okay, we're in agreement. We're in the same spot. What you've got in your situations there, like running the gamut, is you've got some people who would probably have some disagreements in that soft close that are probably like, nope, I'm not quite sure where I need to go. Okay, great. well, tell me more about that. Let's circle back on that. And, obviously if it's a friend or if it's someone that you know and you're just in conversation with them, let that be the conversation you have with them. Like, great, like, what are your, have you thought more about where you want to move? Like, what is it? What do you think is it, right? And there's a lot too that having to like gauge and understand like exactly where they're at. But making sure that you're taking care of yourself in that situation, where you're not being overrun by somebody who's just wanting to chat, who's willing to take up your time and not fully understanding what it truly means to you. So that's a tough balance to run, especially when you're just getting started on things. Like when you've got, 12 clients either selling and or buying with you, and you've got conversations consistently happening, working to get inspections and appraisals and stuff knocked out. You hit a certain point where your bandwidth for side conversations that drag on get very, very minimal. As it sits right now with Cronkite, we're closing anywhere from 15 to 20 homes a month. There's not a lot of days where I don't have a home closing. And there's a lot of things that have to happen for us to get to that. And so the whole point of us being able to have our sales team literally sit down and understand why someone walked in the front door is just as much for us to save our time and help us focus in on the greatest opportunity for them, as it is for the build team to not have to wait for that salesperson to get back and say, oh yeah, I've scheduled the final walkthrough for this day. Or, oh, hey, we've got an inspection coming on this day. Like, we don't want them to be bogged down with that conversation, because the build team has to be able to hit their dates. And if they don't hear anything from the sales team and they don't know to expect anything, and an inspector shows up and they didn't have all their final items knocked out, their final punch taken care of, well, all of a sudden our inspection notice just went from like 3 items to an entire sheet of like, well, there was blue tape here still, and there was, this register wasn't in place, and the screens aren't on the windows. And those are little things, and of course we're gonna knock them out, but man, it's a lot better whenever we have a third-party inspection where they come through and like, this house is great, it's awesome. Maybe, oh, hey, the vapor barrier was flipped over here, fold it back down, or, oh, don't forget your splash blocks, right? Like, those are things we wanna see. But if we don't give ourselves that time, and if we're not purposeful about our communications with everyone that we have, then we can allow ourselves to get buried in, well, we could have. Recently I had one of my sales team members was like, I've got an investor, they're gonna buy 6 houses, it's gonna happen. Like, we're writing a contract this week. I know it. We're putting 6 houses under contract with this buyer. So, okay, great. Tell me the story. Well, they wanna buy 6 houses. Yeah, okay. And I promise you, a month and a half later, we have not sold those 6 houses to that investor, because everything under the sun has happened, right? And I say that to say, diving in and understanding a little bit more of the story, we found out that there's a son, a daughter from Kansas City, who are in the thick of trying to force her into buying that because she's downsizing. And she's not quite sure that this is what she wants to do, but this is what her family's telling her is the best thing to do to avoid having to pay taxes. So it's a 1031 exchange, but she doesn't understand it. They don't care enough to show her. And it puts us at odds with the family members and her, and it's not a good deal. And the lady who owned all of that was like, I don't even know what's going on there. Like, we understand, and we're not gonna push this to happen. You come to us if and when you're ready. It's a completely different conversation, but you have to be willing to say, hey, that's fantastic. When you're ready, I'm ready for you. I'm here for you, and I've got that. And then just do regular touch base with them. And, whether it's, you hang out with them, or it's, hey, just touching in, like, I know we talked about it. Have you thought more about that? Would you like to meet for, 15, 30 minutes? Just to chat about like what you think your next moves are, if you want to sell your house, or if you're looking to go buy something new. I'd love to, right? Like having that, the bandwidth to say, hey, I'm here for you. I want to be able to have that conversation, versus letting them drag you on. But you're putting them at the like, hey, I'm here, I'm your trusted advisor, I wanna be that guy. But with the expectation of like, I want to make sure I'm moving you forward, and if you're not ready to move forward, awesome, great, I'll touch base later. Right, it gives you that power, and it also gives you the time back. I think that's the hardest thing, that's the hardest thing to do, especially when you first get started. I tell you, I jumped into so many rabbit holes, and I followed the snake down the hole as many times as I possibly could when I first started, because I thought that's what I had to do. Right, and I literally buried myself in a million things. I also told myself I had to do all my transaction work, and I had to be at every single house showing. It's a little bit harder to do when you're the one building the houses and you have a whole community to do. It's a terrible idea, terrible. When school of hard knocks hit me hard, and I had to learn through failure sometimes. All right, classify able, ready, and willing, and qualifying buyers. So we've gone into and we've classified the buyers like, okay, this person, they have the motivation, they have the desire, they're willing to move forward, and they want to step into that. I love this. Why would we want to qualify the buyers? And this one is very much in the transactional sense.
Just a logistics thing.
Yep. One, because you want to start documenting exactly what's going on and be able to put defined parameters around it, right? Because you can't start searching for things, you can't start doing things that are going to bring you a potential yield if you don't qualify them, right? You say, hey, I found the perfect house. It's $1.5 million. And like,
Right.
great,
Better be.
yeah, that's amazing. And then they're probably gonna be like, I'll never buy a house ever, because what we want is unreachable, right? So it gives you that opportunity to like really dive in. So one of the things we still do on our CRM, as well as internally, have checklists and things that we follow. So yes, get the guts of the conversation from them, but you still want to be able to dive into those details, right? So does this have a laser on it? It does. Oh, but you can't see it on the screen. Even better.
Cool.
That works out. So contact information is critical, right? You should already have that contact information, but if you don't, please make sure you have that down. Literally something, so like when you've gone through and you've had this and you get the kids' names, the aunts and uncles' names, put them, you know, if you have a buyer sheet or the seller sheet, it's giving you the opportunity to put some context in there. And if you're like me, you have to write stuff down immediately or else it's gone. I have 17 other things that happen as soon as I turn away from one meeting and go to the next. Like as soon as we're done here today, I have 3 more meetings to go do. And every single one of them is requiring me to literally just focus on what's happening in that meeting. And so if I were to sit down and say, okay, I've got all your guys' information, I'm gonna call you tonight. If I don't literally sit down and do that before I walk out the door, it will not happen. And I hate myself for it, but I know that that's what's gonna happen, right? So having a sheet, say, awesome, great. Thank you for taking the time with me to walk through this. I'm really excited about everything. Let me just run through this and make sure I've got all the details that I need, right? No one is ever going to get upset at you for filling out a sheet to make sure that you have everything in a row for them. If anything, it makes you look more professional, more prepared, and more willing to do the litigious and purposeful things that is your fiduciary responsibility as an agent. Like, hey, I'm looking after you as best as I can. With this, there's a lot of stuff on here. I think you guys have a full example of it in the sheets that she gave you. Key information, who will be living in the home? Hopefully you've gathered that, right? If you've already gathered it, don't circle back. Literally fill in the blanks that you already got in your initial conversation with them when you understood exactly what's going on. Fill in those blanks. Then as you come across them, oh yeah, hey, by the way, like, have you had a conversation with the lender on this one yet? Because I really want to make sure that you are aware of whatever opportunities are out there. There's lenders that have rate lock promotions where they can go under contract in the house. I know this because I deal with homes that are months ahead, right? They can lock in their rates and hold it. and then float it down right before they buy. Let's start having that conversation with a lender to understand what's the best opportunity for you. And if we find something next week, I want to be prepared. So are you good? I've got a couple lenders that I prefer to work with, but if you have one that you want to work with, oh my gosh, that sounds fantastic, right? Just getting that information started, and you can put a little note, hasn't done it yet, or having conversations, getting pre-approved now with, such and such. And then just running through all of the ins and outs. And so a few other things that they have on these sheets. And one of the things I do love about these, and like I said, we have our own versions of them. Not everybody wants to ask all these questions, but I'll tell you, it's not a bad idea to have most of these things covered. Do you need to sell your current home to buy your next one? Some people don't. Some people are more than ready and willing to buy a new home and keep what they've got, flip it to a rental, or have a family member who's going to be moving into it. Things like that happen. Do you have a listing agreement on your current home with another agent? If not, hey, that's a huge opportunity for you to step in and take that, right? Like somebody's like coming to you and say, hey, we want to buy a home and we want to buy with you. It's awesome, great. Oh wait, you have a listing agreement with another agent? Just don't want to step on toes, but did you want them to help you buy this home? If that's the case, and you reach out to that agent and say, hey, just, I had a great meeting with so-and-so. They really wanted to buy this house that I was doing an open in. And then through all of my conversation with them, we come to find out that you're currently listing their home that they're selling today. I just wanted you to know that they have this interest. There's a likelihood that you get a referral fee. I'm not gonna say it's a perfect world. You won't always be guaranteed a referral fee. But being open to that is going to gain you respect, access to more conversations, and more opportunities. Because those clients are gonna remember the fact that you didn't try to just swoop in and take. It's like, oh yeah, really good. Thank you for reminding us. Man, you're pretty awesome. That's on the up and up, right? I always think the high road pays out dividends versus just trying to swindle in something. And then let's see. Buyer sheet, how is that any different? It's not any different. It's the same thing. Oh, role play. I will not force you guys into role play. Perfect. One, because it's the four of us and you'd be like, great, like it's really quiet. But the biggest thing for me is buyer qualification conversations, right? Sounds really, really transactional. And if there's anything I can reiterate anymore than our process, which I absolutely love and stand behind tenfold, is walk away from the transactional side of that conversation as much as possible. Get to know your buyers on a even footing. They're coming to you for a reason. They're open to that conversation. They're like, yeah, I'm actually looking to buy a home. I would love some help. Like they've probably spent hours, countless hours online looking at houses. They've probably also told themselves exactly what they have to have, what they think they need to have. And being open to like, great, I want to learn more about that. I want to be there for you and help you as best I can find the potential in what's available in the market or potentially talk about what could be coming, right? I always add that because with new builds, I'm always like, you don't have to always sell just what's on the MLS. It's the tip of the iceberg. What I have listed is the tip of the iceberg. What Trendsetter, Bustle, help me with another name, Aller, what they have listed is the tip of the iceberg. And so the more you guys know of what's out there in the market and kind of have a good feel and understanding for who builds what type of home and who has what community in action, it's going to give you guys that much more of a immediate recall. And so as somebody is telling you like, okay, I gotta have this, I really want this. And oh man, I would love to live in a new build. Most people aren't gonna say that. Some do, some really awesome people do. But the reality is people are just looking for, I think you kind of touched on this just a little bit and said it's a pain point, right? They're bringing out that pain and seeking life improvement. We used to do a training called Force Performance Group. It was Jason Forrest. is the trainer for that. So Jeff Short, Jason Forrest, if you guys are ever bored and you want content, these guys have ridiculous content. They're really expensive though. But his leading factor for all of his sales training is that everyone is moving from a painful moment or place towards life improvement. Pain, defined by everyone, is different and unique to every individual. A pain point for somebody could be, I literally can't stand this 7,000 square foot house. I don't want to clean this much home anymore. Life improvement for them is downsizing. It happens, right? I can't live on 15 acres and maintain it. I'm a single mom. Life improvement looks much different, right? Or, hey, I've got 7 kids and it's a 3-bedroom house. I'm in a zoo. Life improvement looks really different, right? Everyone's life improvement is different. But what we're trying to do is understand that pain point and help them find the best way forward in that life improvement. So that's my biggest, yes, I'm not gonna do any, I won't do any role play. I know, terrible, I'm awful.
You do 15 minutes a day anyway, according to MREA, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I believe in the power of role play. I do make my team do role play. They hate it. But I think if you enjoy it, you're a little weird, but there's nothing better. And I recommend it's like having those conversations, much like me getting up and being able to talk to you guys. I promise you, this is not a comfortable situation to be in, to be up and be like, hey, I'm gonna talk through all this stuff. I'm not the world's leading expert on everything qualifying buyers. I'm not, I'll never claim it. But I'm willing to stand up and talk about it, 1, because I'm passionate about it, 2, because the more I stand up and talk about it, the more I get comfortable doing, right? The more comfortable I am standing up in a larger group to say, hey guys, let's talk about this. I can have those at the real estate revolution. I can sit down with a panel of other builders and talk about what we have because I'm more comfortable doing it. The act of doing is the only way you're gonna get more comfortable living in it. So I do recommend that. And I'd almost recommend going to a friend or coworker or someone in either in this class or I don't know if you guys are doing everything with Shanna for all of her, my mind just went blank.
The coaching.
Yeah, in her coaching class. If you're doing all of that with her, I'm sure she probably makes you do some role play and some scripts. Try switching it up, and instead of it being a script, have it be a conversation. And have the other person just be someone who's looking for a house and tell them, hey, make it personal. Nothing is better than having a conversation with somebody who's literally saying, yeah, this is what I want in the house. Our last role play, I was literally just dogging on my walked out basement house. I literally can't stand it. And I realized how much I couldn't stand certain things about it when I just used it as my case for our role play. And so I have one of our guys literally just ask me questions. Okay, well, tell me more about that. Okay, yeah, I will. I hate my laundry room. That thing is off in the middle of nowhere. Why on earth do I have to drag all of my laundry in front of anyone and everyone all the way up a hallway into this front tiny little room? Why do we put it in a tiny room? Why do we make that a secondary thought? Like literally going through those things. But what it gave them was an opportunity to say, okay, I need to listen. Say, oh, great. Oh man, that sounds terrible. Right? Get to buy in with them. Doing that on a regular basis. And I mean, to your friends who are looking to potentially buy, those are great conversations to learn from as well, right? The best thing I can say in that is when you sit down and run through, who have I spoken to today? What have I gone through? Think through those things of like, wait, what could I have done to take it to the next level? I have what's called lead conversion meetings with my team where we sit down. It's not gotcha moments. I'm not here to tell them how they could have done better. I say, okay, great. So that's where the conversation ended. Whether they have a story or they don't. Obviously, if they don't have a story, it's like, well, where do we think we need to go back? Let's go get their story. Let's schedule some time to get their story. We know their transactional information, but what's their story, right? And that usually leads to like, oh man, I can't believe I missed that. Because they get really like excited. It gets easy to get excited. We're like, oh my goodness, I have the perfect house. I know it. It's 1,700 square foot. You said you needed 1,750. I have 1,789. I can get you 39 extra square feet, exactly under what you're saying you're willing to pay. And it's 4 bedrooms. Oh, this is perfect. And you walk in there and you're like, You had no buy-in, they had no reason to think like, this is the house, right? They're not putting their kids into the rooms, they're not sitting here with family, eating dinner, like, it's like, it's a house, it's a box. It's got walls, has windows, good. You know, you didn't do anything to set that up. So the act of going back through and looking at and talking through like, okay, what could I have done? Where did I leave it? Is there more I can add to that conversation? Or is there more I can glean? Like, maybe I need to understand a little bit more of their your future promise. Say, okay, what is it they want? How do they want to get there? Is selling this house going to get them what they need to do that? Like, does selling this house help them move to Florida? Does selling this house help them get into that next opportunity for them? Or, you know, sometimes you say, you know, hey, right now, I don't know that selling your house is the right move. Financially, it's gonna put you in a different situation. Are you prepared for that? Because sometimes we have to have those conversations, right? I'll get out of that. Any ahas or any major takeaways?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to redo my buyer consultations. I need to call these people up. Honestly, I think that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna call them up and just try to sit back down
Dig a
and
little bit deeper.
just do it again. Because when I did this first, one, just like I said, I got those transactional pieces and I've been replaying them in my brain as we've been going over. And I had one couple that was saying, I want 15 acres of farmland.
No.
And you said that and I was like, I didn't even ask why. I was like, okay, cool. Wrote it down as something that they're looking for and I moved on to the next thing. I didn't even ask why.
Hey, I think you guys need to chat.
Well, you said it.
There's an
It perked it up.
opportunity right
It-
here.
It perked it piqued my interest, but I literally was like,
Yeah, cause it could be either farming or hunting, you know.
I didn't even ask. I literally went to, because I had like a checklist almost like this,
Mhm.
but it wasn't built for that conversation. It was built for a transactional kind of bit by bit.
Yeah, and that information's important.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why it's like, I'm not knocking that sheet in any way, shape or form. You gotta have the details.
Yeah.
And it makes you that much more the, you know, prepared person to be able to say, okay, great. There's a few things I didn't get. Can I run through and just ask you a couple real quick questions? They're not as much fun as what we just went through, but let me get these little details. And they'll be like, oh, yeah. You know, they're always willing to dish some of that. Some of you have to fish, right? But yeah, this was a game changer for our team. Especially here probably a year ago. Because everything was so transactional for a while within real estate.
Yeah.
That it was just because we were building it, it was moving. I got into that rut, you know, when I made all my mistakes and my failures, when I was trying to do it all myself. Things were moving because the market was moving. And if I let myself continue down the path, it's because I was so amazing. I'm not that amazing. Which building a team and having a group of people who are able to accomplish so much more than I could by myself, let me definitely know I have a lot of inadequacies, but it literally helped me step back and say, okay, well, what's the most important part? And sometimes we got to do that. And I would say, if you do reach back out to them, say, hey, I've just got a couple questions. Do you have like 15 minutes or so? I'd just like to run through just to make sure I fully understand. Like, what was the main motivation for, you know, you said you wanted 15 acres. Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
It's a touch point. You're adding value by digging deeper, right? I think Mike Brown, first time I really started like saying like, I don't think I have it all figured out. Mike Brown was leading something and it was on command and how to create follow-ups. And he's like, don't ever touch base with somebody without adding value. And I'm like, well, that's easier said than done. Because the easiest thing is like, hey, I'm just calling, just touching base. Don't ever just say you're touching base. It's like, hey, I really wanted to dig deeper on something. I'm looking at my notes and, you know, I put in here that you guys need 15 acres. I'd love to know more about that. Like, it's racking me. I've got to know more about this. Tell me. And then you can say, okay, cool. And just listen and say, great, that's awesome. Because they may say like, hey, you know, we don't have any additional time. Say, cool, well, you have like 15 minutes. Can I ask you a couple questions? And that's going to give them that open door to say, yeah, okay, yeah, this is what everybody's got it. Not everybody knows to share it. And when they do start sharing, they will share. They're going to tell you their life story if you're not careful.
Yeah.
You might, you know, You might feel like the therapist at times, whenever they start telling you like, oh, okay, cool, wow, a lot of information, great. Some of it are just gonna be like, log that away for, don't ever repeat it, like, let's just leave it. But yeah, it's pretty exciting though. I'm super pumped to hear how this
Because
goes.
the question that I'm just like thinking in my brain to ask for, more for like that dissatisfaction section is, I mean, is it an option for you guys just to stay exactly where you are? Like, is it an option just to stay there? That's a question I asked for sale by owner the other day. Like, I mean, is it an option just to stay? Why are you even selling? And they just went, "Bleh,"
Exactly.
on all the stuff that they didn't have, and I was like, oh, shoot. I
Yeah,
was like, I gotta write that down. It just
Yeah.
came out of my mouth, but
and it's a great question though, right? It's just like asking somebody who walked in up to you and said, hey, I'm looking to buy a home. And you say, awesome, great. Well, what's recently happened that's put you into that thought process?
Mhm.
Right? Like, tell me more about that. Like, great, you wanna buy a home. I would love to sell you a home, but tell me more about what led you to that epiphany, right? Because nobody's walking around all of a sudden says, oh, I'm gonna buy a house, and there's literally no rhyme or reason behind it. I don't care any story I have ever heard of someone who went out and bought their first house. No one has just done it to do it. Because it's an investment, right? That's the largest purchase you're gonna make in that time frame, and it will beget the next largest purchase, which is hopefully your sale of that home and the purchase of a new one, right? So, yeah.
I feel like kind of going deeper like that, like, it's almost like I'm realizing it at the same time, but in my brain, these specific people I'm thinking about, I'm like, I don't even know if they've thought about it. So like, maybe if I go through that conversation, maybe that gives us a chance to really get a more clear timeline out of it too.
And it could also lead to location, maybe 15 acres based off of what they know of in one spot could be 12 acres in another spot. Is it a pond on that 12 acres? Is that critical? Like, those little things completely change. And that's where, like, for us, like, we're looking at it and saying, okay, well, how can I best fit every single thing that they're talking about into a particular model of home? Knowing full well that we're not gonna be able to check every single box on that list. And I don't think that the chances of you finding the perfect home sitting on the MLS, like the home that literally hits every check of the box, even if they say it does, we'll still have things that it's missing, right? That's life. But it's how you make sure that you've understood, said, hey, I know you were looking for this, but this does give us this, this, and this. And this is why I think this is a great fit for you. But taking that extra step to just be like, hey, I understand what you're looking for, and this is why I'm putting this home in front of you. They'll look at that home different, right? They'll consider like, okay, I'm selling because, this, you took that extra step, you went the extra layer. So, yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, we need to re-implement my listing of sellers consultation questions I have set up. I'm just gonna start with that. I'm gonna make my own. I already have this little sheet that I'm printing, and I'm just going to take it and turn it over. Like, this is all fun stuff, but let's talk about what prompted you to start looking for houses.
Yeah.
And what don't you like? And that was one thing about boats. Well, what do you like about your boat now? What don't you like about your boat now? What are you looking for in your next boat? And then I really think, having that discussion about budgets because they're qualified for $300,000 doesn't mean they have that type of monthly budget with taxes and insurance and everything else. So finding and dialing down what's going to make life easy. Are you going to have to go without your Starbucks every day to be able to afford this house? What are the things that, I always, when I show a house, I always, help them visualize, where you would put your bed. What are the mornings gonna look like for you? You're gonna stroll out here on the deck and have some coffee and then listen to the birds chirp, or and help them visualize and paint that picture in their head. And they're like, I must have done a great job, because every time I showed a house, girls like, oh my God, I think that's the one. And then we showed like 10 more houses. And then after I showed them the first 14 houses, I was like, whoa, we're spending way too much time looking at houses. Like, why did we consider this house? And, why are we going back to it if it has a fuse breaker and you want a circuit breaker?
Yeah.
A fuse box, you want a circuit breaker. Or that husband needs a shop space and we're looking at everything in a 1/4 acre lot without a shop. I thought we did have the perfect house, had a 30 by 30 on 1 acre, 4 outbuildings, 4-bedroom, 3-bath. Like, it was pretty nice. It was under the budget by like $65,000, something like that. And they were like, oh, we don't want to replace it had some termite damage or something like that. I'm like, well, just kind of keep in mind, this house right here, if it was fully fixed up, it probably, it books with the rest of the market at $400-something thousand. Is it worth you putting, 15 to 20,000 fixing this up the way you want to and walking away instantly with $60,000 to $80,000 in equity into this house starting? Like, does that not make sense for you guys? Like, no, we don't want to deal with anything like that. That's a big. I'm like, all right, well, or the guy last week, I had a listing conversation or strategy session here at the shop. He's making an offer on a foreclosure home in River Cut that does not match any one of his needs. It does not have a 40 by 60 shop. It does not have acreage. It's by his parents' house and he's getting a good deal on it. But after our conversation, he does not want anything less than a 40 by 60 shop to keep his Hummer. He has 60 bicycles. What on earth? Why do you have 60 bicycles? He's got a Hummer, he's got MGs, he's got all this stuff. And he's like, I have to have a shop for my toilets. I was like, I get it.
The bicycle theory though is whatever you have plus one. So I see how he got 60. I have a handful in my garage. I shouldn't.
He's like classic bikes though. These are like antique bikes or something like that. I'm like, this is silly. So how is that house in River Cut going to solve any of your problems with your Hummer, your MGs, or your 60 bikes?
Right.
And it's just weird. I thought he was maybe blowing hot smoke, not serious. After our text message, we had everything to go live with our exclusive buyer agency agreement because waiting back for an offer on this house. So we offered $365,000 for a $700,000 house that was going through foreclosure, bank owned again. And just story after story. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, are you really serious? Why would you even make an offer on this house? It doesn't fit any of the things. So he told me 15-minute drive from work, perfect. I met him at the open house. I said, who else is making this decision-making process? Because he's moving from Paducah, Kentucky. He's actually working here in Springfield while his wife and kid is in Paducah. Oh, it's just me. Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll make all the decisions, stuff like that. And then going into the listing presentation, it's like, mom said no Willard. I'm like, bro, it's like 15 miles away from your work. I thought that was the requirements. She said no Willard. I'm like, what about Bodark? No, that's too far. I'm like, no, that's only, we're talking about the 15-minute circle. I'm doing 10, 11 miles around, scenic and battlefield. I'm like, I think you're solid, bro. Like,
Yeah, those are always tough.
Rogersville, no.
Yeah.
Ozark, no. Nixon, no. I'm like,
I think those are the ones where you gotta put those opportunities like, hey, this, instead of saying location, say, hey, I found a house
right.
that is 12 minutes from your place of work. It provides you this and this. And then so, because you're gonna have to visualize some of it to them first and then say, and this is where it is.
Right.
Would you like to go see it? Because you're gonna have to set that up as like, I have the solution. This is what it is.
Yeah.
Because some people literally, they have this like parameter that they set up, like, no, I can't do that. No, I can't be on the golf course. No, can't be off of a golf course.
Right.
There's a lot of those different things. So it just really comes down to you setting up that expectations, like, I just want to make sure I'm putting the right things in front of you. So let me explain to you exactly why this home is a fantastic fit and run through, hey, these are your key points that we went off of. Because you might find that they're the future promise that he's looking for. If he's saying he wants the shop, he may or may not want the shop. his wife may or may not want the shop, I don't know, but there's a lot to that. And that's where just diving in, understanding, getting that open book from them, like, let's just talk about this, like, you're coming here for work, but I need to know more about you, and you may find a lot of stuff that's like, okay, you're not actually the decision maker, so let's get the whole family to talk through this, right?
So we sat and chat for like 2 hours and we spent some considerable amount of time on the MLS looking for some stuff and like, well, if mom works from home, why is we're so worried about living in Willard?
When it comes to converting A, B, and C buyers, you know, your A being 0 to 14, and your B being 15 to 31, and then 31 and on, right? You really want to break it down to how often you're touching base with them. There's a lot of different things you can do, and I can tell you that we have simplified our touch points to a monthly regular touch point for anyone who's never bought a home from us but has talked to us. And then also a quarterly, like, hey, here's everything that's going on, touch point. So we're doing, what is that? That's 16 touch points that we're not even doing anything other than it's just naturally going out on its own. But so communicating with the database, making sure that they see you, they hear from you. When you have someone who you have classified as an A, B, or C, who you know is potentially going to buy or sell, not just someone who's a relationship or could be a potential referral, being purposeful behind some of those touch points. That's where having an event, and I know, you know, Blake was probably covering on this one really well, of like why to have those like micro events. And so for us, when we run an event, it's not even about how many people actually show up to my event. It's how many people I get to talk to about the event. The fact that like I'm having it is one thing, and yes, it's expensive to do events. It can be, or you can do them as little as you want. Like you just have meet up at a park and play pickleball. I mean, it could be that easy. But it's the communication of, hey, this is coming up. Hey, let me know if you're gonna be able to make it. Hey, would you know, will you guys be there? Oh man, we missed you guys. It was so much fun. Thank you to everybody who came. Hey, don't forget, we're here to help. You know, if you have any questions or concerns, literally just being there. If you've got someone who's already said that and you're probably touching base with them probably bi-weekly, and because you know that they want to buy or sell, or you've already got them set up and you're searching for homes with them, you're communicating with them on a regular basis. But it's those folks who are like, you know, I'm not looking right now, maybe a couple months from now. We look and say, hey, a couple months comes up on you quick. But I'm gonna put you in my CRM. You're gonna be getting regular information from us. If something sparks your interest, do not hesitate to give me a call. But I would put a note in there as to when you want to reach back out to them. And based off of like, hey, they say they're, you know, 3 months out, call them in a month and a half. You know, if they say they're, hey, we're looking maybe 30 days, we'll start diving in. Call them in 15. Like, hey, I just want to touch base, make sure you guys were still thinking like, you know, it's gonna be a few days out still, but if you guys have something that's like piqued your interest, has anything changed? Has your situation put you in a state where you are ready to move on a home now? Are you ready to sell your home now? It completely changes how you communicate with them. But that's the thing is like 19, so and this, there's not a group that can tell you this is more real than the Grady Real Estate team. I think that they have it down to their own personal numbers, but on average, it takes 19 touch points to connect with someone that you have in your database where you're like, they know you, they feel like they trust you. 36 to convert them into saying, okay, like, hey, I'm ready to buy or sell. And you're the person that's gonna do it for me. But it only takes one to make that happen, right? So consistently communicating, calling on a regular basis, text messages work really well for some. We've actually moved to where we can allow people to say like, hey, I prefer to text. So, okay, cool, we'll text you as opposed to calling you. Because I mean, it's a new day and age. Some people don't like it. We're actually moving to self-guided tours of our homes. Now we get all their information and they have to put in a little bit more online, but it gives them the opportunity to walk through a house completely unencumbered by somebody saying like, well, tell me more about what you're looking at. You know, like Like, why is this house the one you're interested in? It's like literally just lets them in the front door because we know if we sit down with them and have the right conversation, that house was just, it was just an enticement to say like, okay, we are interested. Hey, we're ready. We want a new home, right? So that's all we're using that for. Qualify sellers. Very similar to buyers. I know I spent a lot of time on buyers. That's my forte. But sellers are very, very similar. There's a certain level of sellers that you have to get somewhat transactional about to really understand the details. But when you dive into it, there are so many things that they ignore on the transactional side. So yes, get all of that. And I love your idea of just taking that sheet, flip it over, say, all right, now, what has happened that's causing you to like, it's like, how'd you hear about me? Where are you moving? What's your motivation to move you there? You say, great. Let's pause on that motivation, flip the sheet over and be like, all right, so tell me more about that. Like, you'll get timeline, you'll get potential, like that they need to sell the home for. Like, you're gonna get a lot of those answers just by them being allowed to speak outside of a transaction, right? So all the other things in here are fantastic. I'm never gonna be the one to be like, don't ever use a sheet because sheets are lifesavers. They save my life and I go back and I have those notes and I never end a day without reviewing and making sure I have captured all the stuff that I've done. The pre-listing questionnaire, and this is a really great, I'm just gonna run you through the script that they have for this, because literally this is exactly how you wanna do it. But then my personal 2 cents to it is make it a little bit more personal, right? It's like, hey, I'd like to take 5 minutes of your time to ask some important questions that will help me provide you with the best service, right? You're taking stuff like, hey, I'm here for you. Just give me 5 minutes, right? It's gonna turn into 10 or 15. Let's start by making sure I have your correct contact information. Just gonna fill out a few things on this sheet. And what's the best way to reach you? Perfect. What's the address of the home you're looking to sell? Like, that's important details. We'll go ahead and get those out of the way. It's not the most important detail, but it's gonna be critical. So I can kind of review things and look at comps. Thank you. That's the first thing I need to start on your market analysis. I just have a few more questions, starting with, how did you hear about me? Now I shift focus a bit more on you. Where are you planning to move? And what's motivating you to move now? Bam, right? So the follow-up questions that you have a spot for is, how soon do you need to be there? If we sell your home in the next 30 days, will that pose a challenge to anyone in the household? If yes, what would that challenge be? That's great to know, right? Every time they tell you something, it's like, awesome, great, thanks for letting me know that. Or, okay, well, tell me more about that. Like, if you don't fully understand, like, well, why is that a thing? Typically, if you have somebody look at you and say, well, why? Like, because. And it's like, okay, so that's a challenge. Tell me more about that. Like, what does that mean for them or for you, right? Thank you for helping me understand your situation. Tell me, do you have a number in mind that you would like to list your home for? My argument is, if you've asked them to basically explain like what their motivation is, what their future promise is, right? Or their current dissatisfaction, they're gonna lead into, hey, we're really hoping to get X because we're looking at a home that's potentially Y. So, okay, well, cool. Well, let's put a pin in that, what the potential home is. Let's talk about selling this one. I can run a full home analysis and we can make sure that I know exactly what your comps are. And we can see how close we can get to what you need to be. Because there's a lot of things that happen in the market and I'm really hopeful, right? I don't expect anybody to come into one of these meetings unless you already have the address and already have all this conversation and you already have a market analysis in your pocket. You're gleaming this information and you don't want to sound like, I can make that number happen. Never want to set forth a promise that you can't deliver on, right? So say like, hey, fantastic. It's good to know we've got a number. I want to see what I can do to get us there. So let me do a full analysis and then I'll get back with you. But this is some really great information. This is some really cool stuff. So, and while you're talking about your current dissatisfaction, some of the good stuff that's somewhat more on the relational levels, like, okay, well, what have you done with the house? Like, have you guys added anything? Have you had anything added professionally? Or has it all just been, kind of like personal little updates and things, personalizing the home? Not saying it's bad. There's a lot of people who are gonna love it probably, right?
Should we direct this question more towards what they're expecting in their pocket? Because what they're planning on, how much you plan on selling your house for might be a completely different conversation if you know that they're upside down on their house. They don't have any equity into it, and potentially they would have to pay out of pocket to sell their home.
True.
Right? Or like,
Yes-ish.
have you-
The situation that you run into for that is the market is going to drive what the home can sell for.
correct.
Now, when they say, hey, I want to sell for X, typically, if there's a determining factor like, hey, I'm upside down in my home, that's going to come out because they're gonna, say that. So if we're doing a good job of capturing them, their pain points as to why they're looking to sell, what's motivating them to sell, some of those rubs are gonna come out. The other thing is none of us are Houdini. And being able to list a home for exactly what they have to sell it for and sell it for what they have to sell it for puts us in a bind. And I can tell you that me personally, I've watched several contingent home deals vanish because there were a lot of promises made as to what a home could be sold for or how quickly it would move. And, setting those expectations, being purposeful to be clear, like, this is what we're seeing in today's market. Houses are sitting for, 60 to 90 days. I want you to know, we could sell this house tomorrow, or we could be looking at still trying to sell this house in 3 months. I don't want to set an expectation for you that this is going to be a fast and painless experience. There could be, showings that happen on weekends that are inconvenient. It could be, multiple open houses, or it could be gone in a heartbeat. And I don't want to set it up for either because it could be a blend, right?
Sure.
Same thing goes for price. Just as much as we are not the lender and we can't promise them that their current lending situation is perfect. And I can't guarantee them an interest rate. Like, we run promotions on interest rates all the time. The last thing I can do is promise them that they qualify for a 3.99% interest rate on the 321 buy down. Because I can't promise anybody that. I can't look at you and tell you what you qualify for. And I definitely can't say, yeah, just because you want to buy one of my homes, I'll personally guarantee you qualify. Can't do it. And so when they say, I have to sell my home for this because of, if you hit a point where you say, look, I understand your situation. And this is what I believe your home will sell for in the market. Now, like, we can go to the number you have to sell for, but the likelihood of this potentially taking longer to sell is real. These are your comparisons within the market, and this is where they're listed. And this is why I feel this is a strong price point for you. So if you are truly looking to sell and you have to sell your home, then this is likely what you would get for it. The more real you are in any conversation, the better the end of that transaction. It may not be a perfect situation for them. They may have to sell the home, and they may be upside down, and they may lose money on the deal, but they had to sell, right? At the end of the day, if you've done everything you can in that transaction to move it, you were honest, it moved relatively within the timelines that you set, that expectation of, like, it could take a while or it could move quickly, then, they are confident that you knew what you were talking about. And then if it comes back and there's like, hey, let's talk about inspection notices. Because how many times do you negotiate the house? 3 times, right? Because you've got your contract, your inspections, and your appraisals. So you have 3 separate conversations, and you need to be prepared for all of them, right? Because, hey, this is where the market's selling these homes. This is how many have closed recently. We should be fine on appraisal because these comparable homes should give us our appraisals. And then just so you know, we've gone through and while your seller's disclosure is fantastic and it lists through a lot of stuff, there's a potential that things are gonna be found and we could have up to 2% of your home value in repairs that we'll have to either negotiate or do. And I want you to be prepared for stuff like that. So being able to step up and have that conversation early and often, that's just that much more of a personal statement as to you know what you're doing. It doesn't make it any easier. It's gonna make it tough and you're gonna have those sellers who probably shouldn't sell. It's the same thing for us when I have somebody that probably shouldn't buy one of our homes. You know, I hate that. Last thing I wanna do is be like, no, you know, really to be honest with you, this isn't the best move for you. I want everybody to fall in love with one of our homes and move in and be like smitten with it. But the reality is there are gonna be some people who say, I'm ready to sell my house, and they are not. Or they're not physically capable of selling that home, just because of where it's at or what they expect to get. That's something that I know agents throughout this market have been dealing with on a consistent basis since coming out of the post-COVID, like home sale craze when everything was going for, you know, a 2% interest rate. People had inflated ideas of what their home could sell for because they watched their neighbor sell their home. It sold in a day for $45,000 over ask with no inspections and no appraisal, you know, like waiving the appraisal, like all those things because people were in a just panic to buy homes. We're not in a panic to buy homes. And the price point that you pull from the market and you're using comparisons of both closed and sold homes, you know, of active and available, when you're putting that data in front of them, you're giving them the best case scenario based off of the knowledge that you have at your fingertips. And that's what you're standing on. So trying to say like, hey, what do you want to make out of this puts you in a situation where you're trying to meet a negotiation point that you may not always be able to deliver on. Now, if they say like, hey, I can't sell for less than, say, okay, so if it comes down to it and we receive offers that are less than, I'm going to present them to you. And it's still going to be up to you to say, no, I will not accept this, but I'm going to present them to you just so you know that this is what we're getting. And if we are on the market for an X period of time and I feel like it's in our best interest to lower the price, I'm going to have that conversation with you at this time, set those time limited parameters on there to say like, hey, this is our strategy for marking the home down. Like the more upfront you are about that, the more you can level set and say, hey, are you truly ready to sell? Because I would argue there's a lot of folks who claim to be ready to sell, who then become very, very difficult during that process. And it's purely because they weren't ready to sell in today's market. So the more of an expert you are, the more you talk about it, hey, this is what's happening, this is what we're seeing, and this is where I think is the strongest position for your home. And if something were to happen, we need to be prepared for this. Because there's gonna be times you say, this is what I think is best, and your client's gonna be like, we're listing at X. And you say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. So we will list at that. I understand. This is what you want to get for that. I want to tell you that based off of everything I have, this is where it's likely going to land. I just want to make sure that we've had that conversation and you're open to it, but I'm very willing to list for what you want to list for. And I'm very hopeful that we can do it. And I will promote this home just as much as I do any other home I promote. I'll do everything I can to move this home. It's a tough combo. But yeah, I always shirk away from trying to make a promise of like, okay, well, you need to make X. This is what you want to make on the house, to really level setting it to like, hey, this is where this home sits in the market. Regardless of what you want to make on it, this is what we can sell the home for. So that's where I level set it. I'll get off of here. Maybe. It's the same thing. Oh, continued. Sorry. Again, as much as they probably want me to, I'm not gonna role play this. But any major ahas as far as the sellers conversation, it's a little different than the buyers. I feel like buyers get a lot more love and a lot more attention. Sellers are much more transactional. My biggest takeaway from that, and this is just purely because I deal with a lot of buyers, there is no single seller that is not a potential buyer. And so never lose the opportunity of creating the connection and understanding of what they're walking away from into becoming an opportunity for you to connect and create the opportunity of what they'll move into. So there's always that double edge, right? It's never, I'm selling, now there is the occasional, I'm moving out of state. And if that's the case, like, great. I don't know if you guys have looked on the KW main page and looked at all the different referral agents and the opportunity for us to help them find someone in those markets, do it. Because Elise Riley does a fantastic job. She has a massive network outside of this area. She's referring people, people are referring to her. Fantastic amount of business just from that, right? And it's just because she's created connections within KW. She's part of different networks within KW, and they share information and they help each other. When they have a client who's moving to that area, they already have somebody that they know, oh, I'm gonna contact Elise, because when they move into that market, Elise is gonna be the one that takes care of them. That's a fantastic approach, but that's capturing as much as you can. Like, that puts them, they refer them over, they get the referral fee on that. It's a fantastic transaction for them because all they have done has been the best guide for their clients as they could into the level of which they could cover them. They get them taken care of. And if and when they decide to move back into the state, who do you think they're gonna go to? The person, hey, you took care of me, you got me a great agent, they took care of me, or they could have flubbed it and like, it was okay, they're not you. And we're moving back and we want you to help us find a house, right? Like, I mean, it's a fantastic win-win. Same thing on this, even with sellers, you need to communicate. Communicate, touch base, because everyone that you have in your database is going to buy, is going to sell. It's just a matter of when. So communicating with them on a regular basis, having those touch points, reaching out to them with information to share. Like, I don't even care if it's like, hey, did you know that the interest rates are all over the place? And while I can't guarantee that interest rates are ever going to be what they used to be a couple years back, I promise you now is a fantastic time to buy a home. Do you know anybody that's interested? Are you interested? I mean, that sounds like a pretty stinking good call to me, but I'm biased. That's a call I make, right? Anyways, so I'll move on from that because I don't want to like pat myself too hard on the back. Oh, yeah, no, I don't have an evaluation thing for me. Sorry. I'm not evaluatable, but you can tell Shanna anything you want about me. I promise I'll take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, thumbs down, right? Like, let me run through, make sure I don't have anything else. As always, KW Cares, guys, I don't know if you guys know much about KW Cares. This is a huge thing. KW takes care of their agents in a lot of different ways. Coolest thing about being on the ALC is we have funds that we can redirect as needed when agents here locally have issues pop up, whether it's family issues, health issues, home issues. We try to step up and help as much as we can here locally, but then KW Cares also steps on a much larger scale. So it's super cool. You can also have parts of your compensation utilized towards that. So at every close, you can have a small amount pull off to that. I want to say, oh, my mind just went blank. Why did my mind go blank? She's gonna hate me. No, I won't say her name. We have agents who give above and beyond off of all of their transactions to KW Cares, and they definitely get brought out for that. And then also, anytime there's training coming up, KW Next Gen, whether it's that or family reunion, I highly recommend family reunion. It's not cheap, but it is an amazing experience. There are more sessions than what you can shake a stick at. And I can tell you that I never walk away from that week without a book full of takeaways. And really what it comes down to is sitting down and saying, okay, how am I going to use this to impact my business this year? Every little thing is a nugget that has helped us dive further into opportunity and grow as a business in of our own. So So. Any major ahas from today? I know I've gone over just a hair. I was only supposed to go from 12 to 2, and I went a little bit long because I went off some rabbit holes, but
I think it was extremely impactful and revisiting some of the conversations that I've had specifically and it gives you an opportunity to create that contact, that touch that you need, but also constantly, I mean, I let my customers know, hey, at least once a week, I'll be keeping in touch with you and setting those expectations to where if he has any questions or find anything, hopefully, you're free to call me and let me know what's going on. Like the Booker Bray thing, even despite it freaking telling my person, hey, you got a showing, a request, I'm gonna call him and say, hey, just want to make sure that got through, or make sure everything's solid, that he's, doing his thing, but I think revisiting conversations is super important, especially the first ones that I've done. I've done the who, what, where, more, why, how much, my whole life pretty much. And this is obviously a little bit different. Like my financial planning career is understanding their big why. What are they trying to do with these assets? Are you trying to spend them all off? You're trying to live for yourself? Are you giving this to your kids? What's the purpose of this? And I think that's not a lot of people have investment properties, that's just their single family home, but maybe that's a goal of theirs, and sharing how we can make that goal a reality, not necessarily selling your house, but taking a look at what rents are in your area. And if you're close to getting that paid off, what that recurring income would look like for you without and going and selling that home again. So, and then what it could potentially look like in 10 years, what does that investment property, if it's already, grown $120,000 in the last 10 years, what's it going to do in the next 10 years?
Exactly.
I think that the market of real estate has really caught back up to where it needs to be, especially in the last 10 years, compared to looking at East and West Coast. Even Kansas City, a 4-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, 2-bath is closer to your upper threes, 375 to 425 range. And so when you look at some of these houses down here in this area, we're very modestly priced.
absolutely.
Compared to what the East and West Coasts and even Texas is doing right now. So being relatable, not just being a robot and answering the questions as you go down the line, but getting real personable and deep. That way you can come back and say, well, John, I'm calling you on your bullshit. You told me you didn't like this here,
Right.
and you're going to do the same thing. So
Typically, I try not to call anybody out on it, but say, okay, well, I had this, but you're saying that you'd be willing to take this. Can you tell me more about that? That's the best phrase you can use. Tell me more about that. Like, you told me that this is exactly what we needed. Yeah. But I'm noticing that you're willing to go here. Tell me more about why you're accepting that as because reality is, and that's where a lot of people get caught and they come to you and they just have transactional beat into them because that's all they know. And that's all anybody's done with them before. They have those answers and you come to find out that it's not. So, okay, well, you told me you had to have that 4th bedroom, but the house that you just literally put in front of me and said was absolutely perfect was a 3-bedroom. Right. So tell me more about why that is a great house, right? What is it that meets your needs there that I'm missing? Because based off of everything I've got, that's not the right one. It's okay to say that. Like, hey, based off of everything we covered, this house would not have fallen into anything, right?
Right.
But every once in a while it's gonna happen. So.
And it's just kind of blowing my mind about this guy in this foreclosure house. I mean, he's like, at least 2 acres outside town. Gotta have, no, his original was a 60 by 120 foot shop. Like, okay. He's like, it's gotta have tall walls. I mean, big walls. Like, okay. And he's telling me all these specifics about the things. And then he's like, oh yeah, I made an offer on a foreclosure